take a load off and relax now, 'cause we're drinking with Bronson.
How did you get in the game? When did you get in the game? I remember like you reached out to me, I think like over a year ago, right?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. So it's kind of funny. I had seen I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm an Alpha Investments patron, or I'm one of those, I guess, unscrupulous people.
I'm too, man.
But essentially, I remember hearing about it, and for some reason or another, I did not like it. Didn't click with me at first. I was like, okay, I didn't quite really get it, and I
Mhm.
I was not a patron, if I recall, at the exact time that this came out. But from other channels, I had kind of started hearing about it. So when I got in, I technically got in at like the tail end of Crucible of War First Edition wrapping up. But the saddest part is I have a little box over here, and this is, I call it my box of shame. But this entire box contains every Crucible of War First Edition card I even own. So, like, I mean, the stack is only that big, and that's basically the extent of all the Crew First I have. And then obviously, the game kind of evolved. Crucible Unlimited and WTR Unlimited and all that other stuff.
Yep.
So I would say I got in around that time frame. My first official event was the Monarch pre-release event. So that was kind of exciting. There was a store in Indianapolis here that was hosting that, and I got to go to that. I actually brought the wife with, and I brought a friend, and we hit a cold foil boots on the very first couple of packs, and then somebody right to the left of us hit the fabled
The
library. So that
library.
was kind of
Nice.
exciting. But yeah, that's kind of my general get in. How did you, I guess, get in, or how did you hear about Flesh and Blood?
Very similar. I got in around the crew first type of vibe. Bought a bunch of boxes, and when they were in the mail and they got to my doorstep, they doubled in price. I was like, oh, okay, so something's going on with this game, and then I played it and I was like, oh, okay, this is the reason, and just just did a lot of due diligence the first 2 weeks of finding out about the game, and I'm a Rudy patron as well, and I, probably I believe I heard like him talk about Flesh and Blood, and that's what got me intrigued. But yeah, once you start playing it, and once you go down the lore and everything like that, it's a beautiful game. And then I just went balls deep and just started making content and started talking about the game and playing the game. And yeah, I think Monarch First was the first like event that I went to as well. I mean, you still had that COVID era type stuff where there weren't that many in-person
Wearing
events.
masks and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
I distinctly remember that. And that's actually one of the weirdest things to me about how the whole ecosystem of Flesh and Blood has kind of become what it's become. And I really think that there's somebody should, and I plan on at some point trying to document as much as I can recall, and getting, people that were in the different communities together to make a little documentary on the younger years of this game, because it is such a weird story that, even though I feel like I'm fairly well connected with the community, I would call it, in some regard, obviously, with trying to make content and trying to produce different, aspects, getting to chat with you. I've worked a little bit with, Sloop and, Joey from Decks and Drafts. And as I try to explore, I got to at the Indie meet some of the other content creators, like what Flake was there very shortly. I got to introduce to him, Ethan. It's amazing how I didn't really know anybody. And then within this, like, chasm, it's kind of exploded. So it's
Yeah.
awesome.
You make a really good point. I think the Tall Timmy was talking about that. Paul, he was talking about that in a video the other day. It's just there's a lot of things that occur in Flesh and Blood's history that if it's not documented, if it's not written down, or if it's not vocalized via YouTube, it just those thoughts and opinions fade out over time. I mean,
The ethos will just disappear on it. Yeah,
yeah, man.
that's
And it's just crazy. If you think about like when we first started getting into the game, people were just, bitching and moaning all the time that there weren't enough cards. People need to, LSS screwed up. They needed to print more cards. And then, lo and behold, 6 months to a year later, people are like, oh, there's too many cards. And then now we're flowing back into that, oh, I don't know if there's not enough cards. So, people very quickly forget, what happened in the past, and everyone's very very short term focused, I believe. And it's just crazy to think like we're on set number what, 9 or 10, I think 9 right now with Outsiders, and it's just the
wouldn't it
game's
be? I
just
think it's eight,
chugging
actually,
along.
isn't it? Wait, WTR, Arc Crew,
I
Monarch, Tails, Uprising Dynasty. Yeah, no, it's eight. It's eight.
Wait, one sec. Welcome to Wrath Arcane,
Oh, history
Crew
pack. I'm
Mon.
sorry.
Oh no, wait, Crew Mon. I don't think History Pack counts. And then wait, Crew Monarch, and then you have Tails, uh,
Everfest.
Everfest. So that's 6.
Uprising Dynasty.
Uprising Dynasty. So that's 8. So this is 9 for outsiders.
God damn it,
No,
I
it's
keep, in
crazy,
my
man.
head, it's like I try to keep track of this stuff, and it's weird because it depends on who counts what. Because do you count the original CC decks as releases technically? Because those came out and
That's
they're
true.
weirdly, they have uniquely numbered cards. Like I don't, do I have the box around here? I actually have one of each of those decks. I had to pay an absurd amount of money for them, and I kind of regret doing that. But at the same time, I really wanted to have my goals. One of my personal collection goals is to have one of every Flesh and Blood product, and I don't know if I can keep up with this whole foreign language thing that they're going to do, which I applaud them for doing, but I will not be able to probably have one of every, like, History Pack 1 German, History Pack 2 German, History Pack 3 German. Like, I don't know if I can pull that off.
Dude, I'm in the same boat. I want the same collection as well. And yeah, when I saw that Black Label stuff, I was like, I'm just gonna do one of the languages. And I think the best one is French because it says deluxe on it. So I thought that was pretty
I
cool.
saw that. I really
Yeah.
like that. I will say though, cheers to LSS and the fact that they are exploring alternate languages to. I think that is an intelligent move. I think that them even going in, I don't know if you want to talk about the Japanese
Yeah.
market, but they're going into that market and Brazil, like all these different areas is just going to explode the game, I feel. And I still think that we're in this early stages of this whole growth pattern, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, by the way, because seeing firsthand at the Calling Indian, I don't know if you're going to go to Baltimore later this year, but I will be going to Baltimore. And I really hope that the parallels that I saw in Indy are going to hold true as the year progresses in 2023.
Yeah, I hope I can make it out there. It's still too early to tell, but yeah, it just the topic of alternate languages. I think that one's something that people haven't really discussed as much. And I think that when you think about, okay, they're printing in multiple different languages, why weren't they doing this in the first place? I think they wanted to. It's just there's a lot more than there's a lot more that goes into it than just printing in other languages. You need to figure out how you're going to have your distribution networks and how are you going to ship cargo from New Zealand all the way to, APAC or, Latin America, and what the whole, process with doing that is. There's a lot that goes into it. And what are the networks in there that, okay, now you have like 5 pallets of booster boxes at a port. Like, what happens next? And are there
Yeah, the
custom
ship is
things?
stuck.
Exactly. Or the ship gets stuck. There's so many things on the back end that I think they've really had to really, figure out those puzzles that us as consumers don't really have, that type of, information to really, see what they're doing with it. But I think it's going to be massive growth. I mean, when you have like, I think what is this? Outsiders is going to be printed in 4 different languages. I mean, that's
Uh,
huge.
yeah, technically with English it'd be 5, right? Because
Yeah.
you have German, French, Spanish, Italian, or yeah, Italian, and then English. So that would be 5 if I understand right.
Yeah. And not only
And then
that,
Japanese at some point theoretically, because that's coming. So there'll soon be what, 6, I think,
yeah.
in future state world.
Yeah, and what I really applaud them on doing is the Welcome to Wrath Blitz decks. They finally got around to making those,
Thank
and
you.
they did it. They did it at a good time too. When you're doing new languages, it's like, okay, now this is like the start of our game. Like, these are the simple heroes to learn in a way. Like the Welcome to Wrath ones are so much simpler than the other heroes to like pick up and really get a
We'll,
grasp of.
we'll go on a show and tell version here real quick. So hold on, I'm going to disappear, and we're going to go
Sounds
to
good, man.
freaky cam. So that's another camera in the studio. It's up there, so you can kind of see some of the backdrop behind me. But this is the overhead. So you just mentioned those, and this is where I keep a lot of those decks. Basically, I keep one of each blitz deck, but because those blitz decks didn't exist, if we jump to another camera here, which we can see, this was my custom versions of the original 4 heroes, and I needed to technically do them for Arcane Rising as well because they didn't exist. So now these are going to be, ceremoniously, gotten rid of, because there will be an official Katsu deck. There'll be an official, Bravo and everything, and that is, I am super excited on that. Like, that
That's
is
cool, man.
beyond awesome because I think that having those and having access to them, I did an interview with what was it, Himal Patel at Calling Indy, and one of the questions I asked him was about starter decks and where people need to start, and uh, not circling back to Joey at Decks and Drafts too hard here, but his new player guide piece and getting those decks together. That's where I think a lot of players got inspiration. A lot of these eBay guys that are selling accounts and different decks, even LGSs. That was such a big feather in the cap of the game to get people in for such a cheap
Absolutely.
cost.
Like that marketing material that he made was so pertinent. I mean, it's just the fact that like, okay, this is your hero. This is what type of abilities are. This is why they are doing what they're doing. Like you're putting a card in arsenal because you're a ranger and you have a bow and you need to load the bow and then fire the arrow. Like, the way he detailed it and said, hey, like this is a deck idea that you could do. It's just it was really, pivotal at the time. I've heard a lot of people come up and when I'm talking to them, they said that they utilized that early on in their flesh and blood journey, and it's just I think that more of those types of materials is all the better because getting a blitz deck by itself is great, but it's nice to like read a little pamphlet and really understand what you're doing.
Yeah, and that is the, not to, I don't want to poo-poo on LSS too much, but I think there are some learning opportunities that I believe they have garnished from some community feedback, especially around the Dory versus Reinhardt deck. And one example of that is while it had a great lore book, like I'm a new player. I pretended like I was a dum-dum opening this up and I'm just an ape and I'm ripping into the product. I'm like, I'm excited, I want to play, but then I'm like, where the fuck is my rule book? Like, how do I play? Even Pokemon, like I don't, they have the little cheap throw it away rule book, and I feel like if they would have just included that product, even though the price is a little off, would have been a home run in my eyes. Like I feel like that would have been a great addition. But I also give them kudos that they technically did have it on the thing for learn to play, so I guess it's green with the whole mantra of the paper packs. Like, okay, so I mean, they got an A+ in both categories, but they, I don't know, it's such a, it's a toss up, right? It's I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a tough product to analyze. I mean, the saving grace of it, I think, is just the what is it, Dawn Blade Resplendent, the one card that pretty much pays for the box. Like, I'm glad that it has some value in it. Like that, there's
Oh, you're
one,
talking the glistening steel blade,
yeah,
that one.
glistening
Yeah.
steel blade. Thank you. Yeah, that card by itself, up to this point, has like if you buy the box and you sell that card, you literally only paid $3 for the product. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I really like it. Like it's smart. However, like, yeah, I think that they could have done a lot better with like different, yeah, packaging, like you said, putting in like a little bit more of a rule book. Maybe they figured people, the younger generation is just gonna, go on YouTube and look up different videos from Sloop Dupe or whatever how to play the game or whatnot. But overall, it felt like a video game like box. Did you get that vibe?
Yeah, and I forget the name of there's a Magic deck where they used to literally have the concave front, and I think it was called Dual Decks. And
Oh, really?
when I saw that, yeah, and I wish I could. I'll see if I can find a photo of one. But I remember as a child going into I think it was a Walmart back in the day and seeing the like elves versus goblins, and it was literally that same diagonal box. So it really, in my eyes, harkened back to that. But maybe it's like I don't want to say I don't know near enough as like what Joey from Dex and Draft knows, but like I know that in the gaming industry there are like these templatized things that you can get when you say, "Hey, Ring Ring, I want to produce this product." They'll have a catalog and you can select from and say like, "Okay, I want to print at this, card quality, this card stock, or this, amount of whatever, this amount of, paper bend, whatever style of cardboard. I forget the term, but there's like a flexibleness or like you can get stiff or sturdy and I don't
Hmm.
know if that applies to the gaming world, but in the like product marketing, I do a lot of laser cutting and CNC work on the side. It's kind of a side hobby because jack of all trades, master of none. But basically, you can order different thicknesses of products, and one of the things is you can order specialized boxes. And if I recall, I wonder if that's a templatized thing that anybody could have purchased or whatever. And that could just be bullshit. I really don't know, but that's my thought process on it. Is it's probably from some catalog. They're like, oh, this would look cool with our artwork or whatever. That's who knows. So.
Yeah. I mean, overall, like I think out of all the products they made, like, it's just baffling to me that they're able to consistently pump out great sets like year after year. And yeah, on set number 9 in 3 years is just outstanding. And just each new set seems like it's a breath of fresh air of new different things that they're trying. And, I think something that people don't really realize is if you look at the booster box draft experience, right? As they've made new sets, they've changed the draft experience. And I think that was 100% intentional. I think they're doing that because they want each booster box to have a different draftable, playable experience. So it's like kind of unique in its own way. Like if you see the new set, Outsiders, like you're going to have, I think, 6 playable classes, which is heroes. I mean, you have 3 classes and 6 heroes, and it's going to be a really really fun like dynamic of you could go really any way. Like what do you think about the draft experience? Are you looking forward to it?
Yes, hands down. I think, like, as an example, I have many, I don't know, everything's with arm's reach of where I'm at. It's kind of ridiculous, but like, so it's WTR box.
Yep.
I I am dreading the day I cannot find any more WTR boxes for me to have something squirreled away so that I can relive a draft experience because frankly, I am not going to be a Michael Hamilton. I know that. And
Yeah, same.
I respect the big brain. I respect all these players that are at these top events and I watch them and I can start to see their lines of play. But I am much more of I cannot wait for PvE and not to break away from that, but there are other things that I am much more going to focus on once they kind of come to fruition. That said, from outsiders' perspective, I love drafting. I love sealed. I love that aspect of it's kind of a level set playing ground, but at the same time there is still skill involved, and that skill can very much pay off. And that is why I really enjoyed. Now, I did not enjoy Tales of Aria, or technically, I really didn't like Monarch, but that's mostly because those heroes were not the heroes I grew up with, so to speak. Like
Yeah.
WTR and Arcane, the Dash is my boo. Like I don't know if I can say that, but like I'm a Dash main, and I cannot wait till we get a second like mechanologist character. But
Hmm.
like from outsider's perspective, the draft and having multiple classes, so you have the ranger and assassin for the classes, but then inside of those you have multiple options to fork and choose, which I think is one of the most intelligent decisions that Flesh and Blood could have done, mostly to keep the games interesting, especially with the reveal today of, or I think it was yesterday, of the stealth mechanic,
Oh yeah.
and the fact that the keyword really isn't a key. It's a keyword, but it's not a keyword. I think that that's going to open up the floor for a lot of really interesting dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, when you have different things like that, like the stealth mechanic, right? You need something in order for it to happen. It's kind of like the aim counter in a way too. It's like this card has an extra effect if it has an aim counter, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't have that effect. I mean, it's a smart play because it's like you can't have cards that have bigger power creep than the cards that you already printed, because then that doesn't make sense. You
And
add like an extra layer of bullshit of getting that thing off, but when you do have stealth and it does hit, then it does an extra bit of thing. So I think it's a smart design play.
And we will inevitably see power creep. I mean, Starvo is a
Yeah.
great example of a oops, right? Like it's gonna happen. But if you take the oopses in this game, even with its short lifespan in theory, I think what technically 3 years is the reality of the official release. But based on my understanding, there was design and development years in advance. I think
Yep.
if I understood right, like 6+ years of that stuff. So if you take all that into consideration and you look at games like Magic or the Oopsie Watsy, there every set there's hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, but there are a very vast majority of cards that are literally, I might as well tee them up and use them at Gen Con to make the card castles, because for the charity where you throw the coins at stuff, because that's really all they're good for. In
Yeah.
Flesh and Blood, every common, I mean, the whole fact that I definitely love my bulk. I know you love your bulk, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that's because there will be a day, and mark my words, folks, or you can quote this in verbatim here. There is not enough WTR, ARC, or crew in existence to satisfy the amount of people that will want it come another 3 to 5 years from now. I guarantee it.
You use the G word.
I guarantee. I will go so far as to say that I feel very strongly with the G, the guarantee that I do not believe there is enough, and I don't care what number they quote unquote give us that says that they printed it into oblivion, like Monarch or whatever. I think that this box will hold some super special value to. That is my personal opinion on it. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, with everything that they've done so far, I think the ban list for Classic Constructed is like 9 or 10 cards. Like the amount of cards on your two hands for 8 sets, which in my that's ridiculous. Like that's so small. I mean, if you think about that whole card pool that was printed so far, and like all those cards are completely legal except like a very small handful of cards. I mean, they've done a great job at balancing the game overall. I mean, of course, you have the chain Starvo type things, but I think it really has balanced it up. And if you look at that pie chart and all these calling events and nationals, like it's pretty like there's a lot of colors on that pie chart, and I mean, I just can't imagine what does this game look like in like 3 to 5 years, like you're saying, like how many more classes are going to be developed, how many more card pool is going to be out there and different strategies. It's going to be one hell of a ride. I mean, it's going to be really great to see the game just flourish over the next couple of years. And I think what really shocked me early on when I was getting into the game around the same time you were, Crucible, is I saw an interview with James White, and it was probably one of the first interviews with Chris Booley, and it was 7 days of Flesh and Blood, and James was talking about how Monarch was one of the best draft experiences to date, back, and this was as Crucible was releasing like 3 months before that. So the amount of testing and design work that they do before a set is released is just really like they have it spot on. Like their lead time is so good. And I think a lot of other TCGs can really, pick up on that. Like when you're releasing a set right now, right? Like whenever you release a set, you should already have your next set done testing. And then the other set is your, testing that one, so you have like this
I
lead
heard they
time
were
between
already
stuff.
done with the next couple of sets from what I thought somebody had said that or spoiled it somewhere that they
Oh,
had
I
already
believe it.
developed the next couple of sets because aren't they going in a cadence cycle where they're trying to hit 3 or 4 sets a year? I think it's like 3 mains and one supplemental set per year. Wasn't that their goal? So four a year.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, 3 or 4 a year. But yeah. Like I'm not sure exactly what their lead time is, but they do have like a really good one. Like you said, like you think they have like the next two like done already? Is that what you heard?
I, I
I
believe
believe
that's what
it.
I heard. I wouldn't
Yeah.
quote myself on that, but I will say, and this is the part that leading into what you had kind of alluded to here. We got in at crew, that was set three.
Hmm.
Monarch was what, set five, and here we are at set nine.
Yep.
Now, I'm not that great at math. I mean, I'd like to think I am. I got 10 fingers. So we're still under the 10 finger mark here. And if you start to take that nine and you add, let's say, 2 more years of the game, that's another 8 total sets if you follow this mantra of four, right?
Yeah.
That means for those that are not mathematically savvy, anything you own is now technically in the next 2 years from now going to be in the first 50% of the game's existence. That means even stuff up to theoretically Dynasty would be considered early game flesh and blood content theoretically, and as this goes forward that is only going to compound itself to make that into a shorter, I don't know if we're going to start calling it like silver, gold, bronze age, I don't know, there's magic correlates that to those kind of things, but I really don't know. Well, actually that's a good question. Let me ask you,
Mm.
how do you think of people that always try to make flesh and blood comparable to magic? I don't know how I feel about that conversation of you really it's like two different fruits, and I don't know if they really can ever be truly compared. Like I saw recently somebody did, I think it was we make best was a
Hmm.
power nine in flesh and blood equivalency.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can try to make comparisons overall, but as long as you understand that they're, vastly different types of, mechanics, gameplay, lore, the people who own the equity of the brand, there's slight differences, some more
There's
subtle
there's
than
a big
others.
weight on that equity of brand piece in my
Yeah,
eyes. I
yeah,
think
right.
that
Just a
that's a
little bit.
huge, that's a tall glass.
Just a
So
little difference there. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean there's all these like different factors, but I think it's fine if you compare some stuff. What was interesting, did you see James White posted very early on in Flesh and Blood where he had power 9 cards across from Flesh and Blood cards, like the Heart and the Cold Foil. What is it? Cards from Welcome to Wrath. Have you seen that post?
I think I don't know if I've seen that exact post, but I have seen a photo somewhere that I believe had that parallelism to it,
Yeah.
and that stood really strongly with me. I don't know if you've ever owned Power. I back in the day did own some Power. I got rid of it Gen Con a few years ago, and I don't actually really regret getting rid of it because I do truly believe that if you don't enjoy the thing or the game that it's a part of, it's just a piece of artwork or something. And I appreciate the art. So like, don't get me wrong, like Chris Rush is on the Black Lotus or whatever, like that. It was Chris Rush. It was Chris Rush, I think. Anyway, so
Yep.
like the artwork is beautiful, but if that's why I sold, like I had a Gaia's Cradle, and I made a video about why I sold that, because to me it was just sitting there, and if it was worth seven, I don't know, like $1,000 at the time. So if I can take that and convert it into Flesh and Blood, which I did, and I enjoy the game and I play it, well, now I get to use that money towards something that I actually enjoy versus like, oh, cool, it's sitting there. Nice.
And that's so great about collectibles, man. Like you buy them, they might be a little bit overpriced at the time, or you might be paying a good amount of money, but then years down the line, you don't like it anymore. Or you're just like, I'd rather have something else. You can always trade up. It's great how that is with the collectibles, and yeah, no, I mean, ultimately, like that's the beauty of the whole hobby is like just buy what you want. Like I really like Alpha Bulk Flesh and Blood. So I buy it. Other people like, Saint likes to, he bought a bunch of steel product and he's collecting a lot of
Ink
the
snatches.
great, pink snatches. Yeah, he's going really hard there. And the graded cards, man, his collection's like really fire. But, and you have a Sloop Dupe where he built his whole like Dromide deck, like a pimped out one. Like it's really cool to see that, it's like, it's a part of your personality in a way of branching out into what objects you want to acquire.
He kind of convinced me to try it, and that was what I did on Thanksgiving. They had a Black Friday sale, so I'm staring. There's like 40 slabs that are here that I sent off. So I sent off almost every legendary I have to test it out. And then again, so two things I forgot to do early on. One, congrats on the 1K. So,
Thank you.
cheers. That's a major milestone. So congrats there.
I want to
And I don't know if
shout
you
out though James Curry. He was very nice and he put a post on the Flesh and Blood fan page. So shout out to them. I think I got 30 subscribers, pushed me over the 1K. I'm just very very humbled.
Nice. I think that's awesome. And then I also, again, I want to say again, thank you for, I don't know if you remember this little bad boy. That was the crack bobble
Oh
from
yeah,
Worlds.
no worries, man.
So like that is part of my, I would call it my special collection. So the other one here is a cracked bobble signed by Sam Yang, and they both graded damn near identical nines. So like I think it's cute that they match. Now that I've started to get into this whole grading world, it's a freaking, crazy rabbit hole where it's like, oh my God, and one's a gold label, one's a yellow label, it's like, God damn it.
Black Label, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. So
miss seeing you. Where else? I know you were like busy, but it would have been cool to. I saw so many content creators at Worlds. It was nuts, man. So
I
many people.
really hope at Baltimore, like I know I've never gotten to meet several. There's several that I have not met, but I really would like to see if even some of the ones from even Australia, which, all those that are down there, as you know who they are. I
Hmm.
really hope that like, Fluke and Tall Timmy, if they get up here, like I would love to even just shake their hands, like just be like, oh, thank you. Or like even with I think Sloop's going. I'm assuming like Saint will probably be there, would be my guess. I don't know if like Rudy or the professor, I don't know who all's going. But it would be interesting to see where or who would show up. I would love to do interviews, which is what this setup here I'm working on is. This is my new interview rig for, I ran into some
That thing's
problems
legit.
at the calling. So I'm fixing and remediating those problems so that I can actually have long form interviews and not have a oopsie where I lose some footage. And I won't tell you which one I accidentally lost some footage on. But when that video
Oh
comes
no.
out, you can clearly tell where what I have to do to that. But anyways,
But yeah, no, all those guys are so good. Like, Sloop Dupe, I met him in person and he's just such a nice guy. Really cool. And same with Fluke and Box and the Tall Timmy. It was great meeting them at Worlds and just, seeing them in person. Just really cool people in the industry, in the Flesh and Blood scene. And Saint really, he's like the biggest, like, like Bulldog, I feel like the guardian of this whole game. I think that his real life persona is a guardian. Like he's a great arbiter of the game and just really cares for it and will do anything in his power to, to help it out. It's great to see. It's great to
There
hear.
There was a video he did. And I don't remember if it was a Patreon exclusive or if it was one that he publicly put out there. So I won't go into too much detail because I don't know if I don't want to like spoil something for that or provide information that shouldn't be. But there was a section, if I recall, where it was something very he again that very I will basically hunt down and destroy anybody who is trying to damage this beautiful gem of flesh and blood. And I like had to listen to that 3 or 4 times being like is he like I just it was such an interesting thing, but I genuinely believe that he very much, like you said, he's in it to protect it, and I greatly respect that. I think that that is awesome. So
It really is, and it's great to see that LSS is really, branching out and talking to different creators and people in the community, and just really, being personable. I think that if you look at the industry before Flesh and Blood got on the scene, you really didn't have that much personality between the people of the trading card game company and like the people in the community. And I think that, right off the bat, like when they did the content creator kits, right, they would send out, like for the spoiler and preview season, they would send out a handwritten card saying thank you so much for supporting our game, really means a lot to us, here you go. Like that just, it's just such a like homey type of thing to do. Like it's that type of thing that you were told to do as a kid, and like it just doesn't like transfer into like the real world. But like they're just, it's really smart that they're fostering that and putting it out there into the community.
I'm aspiring to one day hopefully obtain one of these awesome, fantastic, style of cards like that, or just even some sort of thing from Flesh and Blood or LSS in general. Because interestingly enough, as I got something from Genesis recently, I didn't realize how special it was to understand that even something as simple as a handwritten letter or a handwritten thing, even if it's just a very small thing, can bring you that much closer to the fan base, to the community, to like it helps almost it gives you some sense of like, oh my gosh, like people around me are part of this community and they
Yeah.
exist and they care, versus like back to the WotC thing or whatever, not to poo on them too much, but like the whole Magic 30 and what they've done and all that, it's like that's the completely anti-opposite direction of where their world is going. Like I don't see any of that in any content creator world. Like it's just, oh, there's another video on a thing, and if I don't do this, I don't get paid. But they fucked up today, so that's today's news. Versus like everybody in the Flesh and Blood is excited, and they really want to provide that excitement. So
Yeah, and the relationship aspect does have its, interesting aspects. It's because, like, content creators and people in the community might do stuff that LSS doesn't like, or maybe they do things, they do like, and vice versa. LSS could do things that we like or dislike. But, all in all, I think everyone's just in it for just seeing the game grow and succeed. And, it's, I think the reason why it's had so much success, let's go into that. Like,
yeah,
back in the day when we first started the game, it was getting more recognized out there in the TCG industry. You had CFB take it on and TCG Player, and it started gaining a lot of popularity very fast. And it's like, I think that the TCG market overall isn't very informed to why this happened. And I think the story thing that you were talking about earlier, if Flesh and Blood
it
has a documentary, it
that needs
should
to be in there.
it should go back to the reason why Flesh and Blood succeeded was because it's a really damn good game and it's a really damn good product. And I think that that whole narrative has not transpired into 2021 and 2022. That, and there's a big boom of all these different TCGs that like half-ass all their stuff. Not all of them, but a good
Well,
majority of them. I won't name names, but
yeah,
anyway,
no, I have ones too. I will remain ambiguous on purpose. Cough, cough.
yeah. But I think that I've ranted about that a lot, but I think that that's so important to realize. It's like, I may have my thoughts and opinions on Flesh and Blood. Who am I, though? I'm just a normal guy in a normal room. They made a global trading card game in the year 2020 in the midst of a pandemic. Like, that is fucking, like, ridiculous. Like, you couldn't even write something more ridiculous than that, but they pulled it off, and they started this whole type of renaissance of TCGs that we've been in the last 2 years. And there have been, different things that have occurred after that, but it's just wild, man. It's really cool to, watch and see how it plays out.
Have you watched Jeopardy by any chance, or you
A
ever
little
seen
bit.
Jeopardy?
Yeah, I've seen
All right,
Jeopardy.
so there's this thing, like, I think it's called the Daily Double. I don't watch it that much, but like essentially, I believe that's the correct term here. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna quote unquote joke in here and say, you just hit the Daily Double. So I want to go back to this Wayback Machine that you're talking about here, because I want to have one of these. I guess I've crossed the fence in my yard, the white picket fence kind of thing, and I'm gonna say back in my day. And I can say, do you remember before TCG Player where it was Scry magazine, where you would have to look up in the back and you would go and find it in the list of names, and you'd find the actual card, and you would look over and you'd say, this is the high, mid, low, and then that magazine came out once a month, so that you would really only have data from like once every month or two, and if you didn't have that, you were not a cool person.
I've heard of this from Rudy, but I never used it. I was
Oh my
into
god.
baseball cards when I was a kid, and I had those Beckett things, and I know what you mean. Like, I'd look up a certain trading card and find the value, but like, how even accurate were those? I remember listening to the Beanie Babies documentary, and I think they had a very similar book, and the lady just like made up numbers.
Oh, honest to God, I was too young to know how accurate the numbers were. Other than when
Yeah,
I looked at it, it gave me a general ballpark. But I would say, barring the top 5% of cards, I would imagine that it was fairly accurate based on my general understanding. When I walked into a card store and I would maybe like open this book and I would look at the Pokemon, and I would look at the because that back then I really wasn't into Magic as much as I was Pokemon, and I'd be like, oh, okay, here's the Venusaur from base set, and it's this medium. Oh, he has it for this. Okay, Dad, can I have my allowance, and can I buy this or whatever? I would kind of have enough knowledge to kind of do that and haggle with them, but at the same time, it wasn't uh probably the best quality, so to speak, because like it might be for near mint versus like heavy play or whatever, and everybody's gotten so dang specific on like you know this card is partially dinged, so now it's heavy, or oh, there's a scratch on it, so now it's no longer near mint, and it's like I
yeah,
can't keep up with that stuff anymore. And not to go down that rabbit hole, but in my eyes, they should just, unless you're trying to grade a card, sell it as a, this card can be graded checkbox, and then the rest of it is no one gives a fuck, and just sells it as is, because I'm gonna play with the card, so who cares if it's scratched or not? But anyways, so back on the Wayback Machine, dead card games like CCG, Star Wars CCG, or even like Wizards of the Coast, all these different ones that kind of came out with, like there was another Star Wars, I think it was called Wars, or
the
there was a
Star Wars
couple various
Destiny.
ones. Destiny is another one that went to the way of
Yeah.
the dodo bird. Well, this is another example of one of these games, and it was called Doctor Who Battles as a
Ooh.
as a good example. And one of the things that people don't seem to respect nowadays, to tie this back into what you were talking about, is card design. So I'm going to switch my head out and go to this overhead. We'll go to this overhead cam. And what's interesting is when you see the way these cards look, and you compare it to modern day TCG, the renaissance of what we have and how good we have it is mind boggling. Like, just look at that. Like,
Yeah.
that is atrocious in my eyes, and
Yeah, that's
like I
ridiculous.
couldn't I couldn't even begin to tell you how horrible, like, this
What
is what we used to have to play with. Like,
what is on these cards? Is that just people's faces?
yeah, oh, like, oh, here you got this is a rare, so like that would be the creme de la creme of what you got. And it reminds me of certain Kickstarter games recently, and other games that have come out that don't spend the quality time of, like, I mean, even the cardboard here is, it doesn't feel the same, it doesn't, if you smell it, it doesn't smell the same as, a Flesh and Blood card would, or even a
Yeah.
Pokemon or a Magic, and it's, I don't know,
Well, you
it's,
gotta imagine that all those games were probably trying to do the same thing that is happening in 2020 and 2021. Like, just rush out games to market that appeal to certain categories that you can,
End it.
double up your money, and then the next
Ah,
set fails, and then like the thing people don't understand is like just because the CCG fails doesn't mean the owner failed. Like if you print a bunch of boxes and they sell out and you made like double your money, and then you do a second wave and you sell it to distro, that's all you have to do as a trading card game company. Once you sell to distro or shops, then you have the product off your plate. And if it doesn't sell and the market just flops, then you can take your earnings and just say, oh well, we're going to go bankrupt, and just take all the money and run. So
oh yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And like you said, the renaissance of games in the last couple of years. I mean, this is another one that came out, Soulforge Fusion. I bought this at the Calling Indie. Actually, they had a little demo booth, and I don't know. Do you know much about this game? Very much,
Nah,
or have
not
you heard
really.
about it? So what intrigued me about it is this is more of like a board game style. So like we're an
Oh,
avid
that's
board
cool.
game family. We have a lot of friends that play board games. I think between what my collection is and what my friend's collection is, we probably have at least, I would say, 1,000 board games between the two of us or three of us.
Wow.
So we have a very extensive board game collection. And what intrigued me about this and why I was so interested in this is basically you take two halves of decks like Jumpstart from Magic and you put them together, and the two color combinations create kind of a play style within that. But you don't have to think about it, and they're like procedurally generated, so it's like Keyforge, so they kind of exist in their own little weird ecosystem. So two decks will never be the same kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the game design there is completely different than like in Flesh and Blood, where let's say they come out with PvE or PvP, or I'm assuming it's going to be PvE because that's what they've said, player versus environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the gameplay aspect to that is a different flavor and feel than the hyper competitive CC that I saw at like the Calling Indie or at the World. Those kind of things that I watch on video. I have a different flavor aspect of why I like co-op games, why I love on like, as an example, I'm a big Borderlands 3 player. I love playing Borderlands on computer because I don't have to be that great. I can still snipe away and have my fun thing, but I can still have friends. Or Diablo, I was the loot goblin. I would just go around and I would kill things and just spam the loot pickup because that's apparently all I'm good for. And
Yeah, honestly, man, like I hope Flesh and Blood has a type of product that is geared more to the casual players. Like Jumpstart for Magic the Gathering, like I'm not like too pro like a lot of their products, but Jumpstart is a great product. I love how you can just
it
get two
is.
packs, open them up, slam them together, you have a deck. And something I just thought of, dude. What about a lot of the type of booster packs that have what is it, the sets that are not core in Flesh and Blood? What are those?
I think they used to call them expansion, but I believe they changed the name to because you're talking like Crucible, Everfest, and Dynasty
Yeah,
supplemental. I think they
supplemental.
changed it from supplemental to expansion or expansion supplement, but they're one of the two now.
Let me pitch you this supplemental
Oh,
set in the future, right? And all the booster packs have just one class in them, and you can do a hybrid hero. So you take two booster packs, slam them together, and then you have like a warrior ninja, and then you can use all the cards from those packs. Like, what do you think about
I would
that?
love that. I would
Wouldn't that
love
be
it. I would
amazing?
love it. I would love it. I would love it. And I think that there's a format called Chaff Goblin I've heard of, and it's
Hmm.
not exactly the same, but I think there's like a token that you get, and that gets into the fan aspect, which I'll now touch on because there are some hardcore people doing some pretty amazing stuff like Fabrary and FabDB, and there's like a JSON guy. There's the group. I don't know. There's a guy named Crow. I just got him to send me this. This is his version of PVE because apparently LSS has taken a little too long to do
Oh,
that. So
that's
this is
awesome.
like a custom PVE deck. Sloop just got done reviewing. I think there's another gentleman that created a PVE style, or like it had like low locations like Everfest, like the carnival slot and other stuff. So those have come out, and then there was another one I think as from Go Again Gaming. There's like a something. It's part of the online client world, which I don't really do much of the Talishar or the felt table, but there's like a solo mode, like you go through and you like level up and you get a treasure pack or whatever. So a lot of that I think does tie into your idea. But as far as the dual packs are concerned, hell yeah, I would love to open. I got two Uprising packs I was going to open at some point, but yeah, open these, combine it. That's my deck, and
It's such a
that
good
is
concept.
specifically, yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, and you touch on a good point. There's a lot of different like player made stuff that's really emerging like in the last year. It's great to see. I mean, Talishar being the biggest thing. I mean, I honestly don't know why there aren't more people on like Twitch streaming Talishar games nonstop. I mean, I think Mansant is doing that a good amount on YouTube. I've been watching his videos, and it's good content. People want to watch it. It's great to see.
The only thing that scares me about Talishar, and this I think is part of the problem, is somebody was going to do it. There was never a
Yeah,
question about if there's not a digital client, that's not going to not happen. But the core mission, obviously, of LSS is, to get together in, I believe it is, I don't know the exact quote, but it's in person, in flesh and blood. They want people to be, and play together. Well,
it's
that
bringing
isn't
people
going to work.
together in the ones
Yeah.
and zeros.
Well, that's the thing is, if I want to play a game with you, if I want to jam a game with you, or I have a coworker that basically plays Flesh and Blood. He's in Wisconsin, I'm in Indiana. So if I want to play a game with him on lunch, well, my only opportunities, because I work from home, is I'm going to jump on Talishar and we're going to jam a game over lunch because that's the way it's going to work. And I appreciate that that is there, but at the same
Mhm.
time, I want to go, like, I have this whole thing where, I want to take what I have, all of these, and I want to slap my slabs down on the table, and I want to play my Voltron Dash against somebody and see if I can transform into my Mechie boy.
Yeah, you got the Voltron mech?
Oh, hell yeah. It's
Good,
it's
good.
such a oh, it's such a sexy
I
card.
just
Like,
bought one the other day, man. It's not too much. It's like 150. That's not too bad.
where is hold on, let me show. So this is, again, part of the ridiculousness of what I did here was I didn't realize, like, if you were to zoom out on a whole play mat, like, it's damn near impossible to like fix things. But like, so there's the Hanabi blaster, so like I got one of those graded. And
Nice.
even though it's not the best in the world or whatever, like when you start trying to slab or put these on a table to be like, oh, okay, here's my weapons, and then like, so there's plasma, but like this is just a rainbow foil. So like, that was kind of cool. Like, I don't have a first edition, so I was like, that's the best I got, I'm gonna send it in. But the one I'm most proud of is this, which is, I had that from like a first couple of packs, and it's like dinged crap.
Hmm.
So like, I didn't even care. Like, it could be a bad grade, but it has that sentimental value.
Yeah,
But then
definitely.
apparently, like, things like this, like, apparently
Hey,
that's good. Like, that's considered like a great, like, oh my God, you hit the lottery kind of a thing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's neat. But
it's
let me
awesome.
see if I can.
9.5 tunic.
Yeah, here it is. So like this, like that was the mech that I pulled out of one of the first Dynasty box that we got, and I was like,
Oh,
that's
nice.
sweet. So, but I actually emailed them, and I was like, hey, can I make sure that on this is the face up, so that if I can transform, because all these will link together, so like you can stack all your equipment together, and it like
Hmm.
just sits, and I'm like, well, this is now on top, so it you can use it. And I was like, so I specifically requested for that to be
Oh, that on top. That's smart.
yeah.
It's
And then
such a good
my
card, man. Like it just looks so good.
this is my treasured card. I would say that is the absolute most treasured card I probably own. This was the first Dash token I ever had, and then I think it was Fab Unsealed did like a send it off to get Sam Yang to sign stuff, which is why I sent the crack bubble off, and then I sent this off and basically got it signed, and then I got it graded. So I don't even care what the grade was. It was just more of a like, this was the token that for every game I've ever played with Dash, I had basically used this token, and I was just ecstatic that like it is now safe and not going to like turn into a pumpkin in the middle of the night or something. So
That's awesome, man. I heard somebody very similar. They got like a Prism starter deck, and like they wanted James White to sign the token, and he's like, Why do you want me to sign this?" And he's like, "This is like the first card I ever got for Flesh and Blood. I want you to sign it as the creator." So just cool to hear like there's sentimental value in things that are important to you. And I probably have stuff too. I can't even think.
I will throw all those back in there. And oh, by the way, that is like the reason that was the worst decision ever, is because trying to transport these damn things, like, that is technically my equipment sideboard.
That
This
looks
is
huge.
this is ludicrous. Like, that combined with this is the deck box that like I said, I did laser cutting stuff. So this was originally designed for
Hmm.
Commander. So you could put your hero on the front, and then, like, on the inside you'd have your deck. So like this would
Oh,
be
that's cool.
um, different divided. But like,
Yeah, you can fit in that.
when that becomes my deck that I'm carrying to armories, it's like, this is stupid. So I had to rethink my I went out and got some extra pieces of equipment, because I was like, this is stupid. I can't keep this up.
Yeah,
It's too hard to fathom. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's really crazy. Like with all the decks I want to build, like it's hard to like go into certain things because I don't know how you feel, but like if I ever want to play a hero, I've got to just focus on like one class. Like from the very beginning of the game, I focused on Guardian, and like I played like tons and tons of games with Guardian. Now I'm trying to like branch off into other heroes, but I've been getting into my headspace if I just like want to build all this different stuff. Like I wanted to build like OTK Briar, and then I was looking at like Lexi, and then just mine goes crazy like thinking of different like deck ideas. Have you branched out other than mech?
so I made a conscious decision about the time of Uprising. So when I went to the Uprising pre-release event here in Indianapolis, it was a store called Gamers Loot,
Mm-hmm.
and Ninja was the thing that I was saying, okay, I'm gonna learn Ninja. And because really I played a little bit of Katsu early on, and I guess maybe it's more of, I don't know, if like I said, I don't know if I'm like big brain, not big brain ape man. I just want to, stab stab stab, or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know what my game style is, but essentially I fell in love with the style of the whole board state items with Mechanologist, and I really enjoy that feel. But then I also wanted to have something that was not as complex, of where I had to have, like, I don't know if you've heard of the, what is it called, Flesh and Blood, the token dudes or whatever. I don't know what the hell their name are. The metal tokens. So like all the, like I have a bunch of these, because when you're playing mech and you got all the steam counters, you got to have a shit ton of these stupid things to
Oh
like keep
yeah.
track of everything. So like I was like, I want something more simple, and I went with Katsu. So I went and I started saying, okay, I'm going to buy all the ninja stuff, and so that got me into the mindset. So Uprising was what, mid 2021, I think, or 2022. It
Probably
was, I think it was like mid
2022.
22. I said to myself, well, I've noticed that other legendaries were dipping because the ninja was the hot stuff. So like the mask was going up and everything. And I was like, well, now it's a great time for me to just throw. I was going to buy a booster box or two of some other stuff. And I was like, well, screw it. Why not start buying one of each legendary?
Yep.
And what I essentially got into the mindset of is very much like you. I was like, hey, I want to branch out. But I opted to say the hardest part of getting into any class seems to be the legendaries. So if I have the opportunity to pick up each one of each legendary and keep it as a personal set, so that now I can mix and match and play with for the perpetuity of the game, because it's obviously a forever format in Flesh and Blood, unlike a rotational format, meaning that anything, for those of you that may not know, is for anything for the remainder of the game, unless it's banned, you can use it anywhere. An example of a card that's not or may be banned is like Go Bananas, as an example. That's only for UPF and not other stuff. But
Yeah.
as an example, I started going after the low value cards, and like I picked up my or what was it, the skull, the cross strap, the one that went
Yep.
from $30 to $100 just because Ranger got announced in the latest set. So like I picked one up for $30, and then it was like, now it's $100. So if I would have waited, I would have paid 3 times as much. So things like Silver Palm, stuff like that. I've picked up one of each of these. I call it like sub $40. Like once a legendary hits below 40, I try to get at least one of it if I don't have it. So yeah,
That's really smart. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's like, yeah, these cards are good till the end of time unless they get banned or something. Like but like LSS has stated recently, they really try really hard not to ban anything. Like they'll ban commons and rares before they get up to the majestics, and then legendaries at like an absolute like last resort, because
the first
it's
legendary to get banned is going to have a conniption fit from everyone and their mother,
oh yeah.
because you're going to have people be like, oh, well, that was the first one I ever hit, and
Yep.
now the game is against me, and it was worth X amount, and now it's not worth anything. And it's just like, boo-hoo. They're going to seriously not try to do that for every possible scenario, because they'd rather let the hero living legend out than probably do that. It would be my thought, because
Well, I mean,
I don't know,
Starvo's a
for
great like case study. I
example of
mean,
that. Yeah.
like they did ban him. They were like, okay, let's like let him living legend out, and you know, it kind of gets into an interesting topic with different metas that revolve around a hero or two heroes that like are a little bit like like S tier, and then everything else is C tier. And I'd like to get your thoughts. So a really great player called Tariq Patel. He's
Yeah.
won, yeah, I believe he won nationals last year. He's in my local group. He made a tweet, and it seemed like a weird type of thing to say, but it kind of made sense. So he was saying like, hey, the meta was better with Chain and Starvo. Now it's just a cluster of like all these different heroes, and it's harder for new players to come on and understand. And at first I was like, I don't understand this, but he kind of had a point, because if you're getting into the game of Flesh and Blood and you're trying to learn like how to play it, it's a lot easier if you're just playing a hero and your opponent's playing that same hero, or they're playing the the other hero. And like it's a lot easier to pick up on the game because you don't have to worry about learning like what like 9 or 10 heroes do and what the matchup is. It's like you only have like 3 different matchups and you like sideboard for that instead of like a bunch of different stuff. And I thought that was a really interesting observation. It's like it is kind of in a way more friendly to new people if the meta is broken for a short period of time. What do you think about that aspect? Because that kind of had my brain like rattling around.
Can you see a photo of what I'm pointing at right now?
Oh, welcome to Wrath.
So here's my short version of this, and
Yeah.
the way I jokingly refer to this is, are you a car guy by any chance? Do you like vehicles?
No, sorry.
So there's a very basic analogy that I throw at people all the time, and it's are you a Ford or a Chevy guy, or a gal or a person or a potato? I don't care what, but are you a Ford or a Chevy person?
I'm a
And most people are
Toyota.
like, that doesn't make any sense because there's other brands. Well, I look at all the heroes in Flesh and Blood like car brands. And this is the weirdest analogy you can probably relate to, and I don't think anybody has ever said this on any other channel anywhere.
You're unique.
But with when you think about it, it's trying to break it down to the most common denominator to explain things to somebody. So back to like Joey Dexon Draft's, learn to play guide. He has this very interesting correlation of like all the heroes and what their keywords of like strategy and how easy they are to play from easiest to hardest. And I've discovered, as an example, like I said, my player style is very much a like the mechanologist or ninja or things that are seeming in the more basic, not like the Kano because you're a big brain brainiac kind of a person level.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I am fine facing 5 or 6 different heroes. But every time I see that, I'm gonna be like, hey, what's that card do? Does it have an on hit effect? Am I gonna discard something? Do I need to worry about you digging into your arsenal? Or like, I have like a couple of questions that I'll try to ask because I still just genuinely don't know everything, which is why I don't think I can be a pro player because I couldn't do that at big tournaments, right? Like you just expected to know everything theoretically. I mean, you don't really have to, but those guys know enough of the stuff. But to circle back to answer your question of, is it better with less heroes? I think there's a balancing act between having over complicated heroes, such as the starter deck for the what is it? The Phi versus Dromai. And if you looked at in those Blitz decks, there's these star cards in the very beginning. Did you ever see that on the
No.
Blitz decks where it shows like a level of like how hard this character is to play?
And
Well,
Joey's thing. Yeah, that was
the,
perfect.
Well, actually, I'm just talking the actual official Blitz decks. They have a
Oh,
card. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
I
Yeah,
don't
they're right
remember
on
that.
top. Yeah, so in these Blitz decks, let me see if I can grab one real quick. It's silly,
That's
but it's
good.
actually one of the neatest things they could have done. Is it's on the back of
Oh, that's great to do because like Kano is like really hard, but like if you're playing Fi, it's like a lot easier. Same with Bravo is a lot easier than other stuff like Bolton or Prism.
so like there's one here. Let me go to this camera so you can see
That's
it
so
real
cool,
quick.
man.
But like it gives you a difficulty star rating on how to play, that versus like I think maybe I don't have it in the Dromai deck, or if it is, it's on the back of oh, there it is. It's on the back of that card. So like see how it's difficulty star like 4.5 stars. Well,
That is
I
cool.
I didn't like that. I like the card, but the reason I didn't like Dromai is because I just couldn't play it right. I kept literally losing every game. So when you look at that and I'm trying, I talked to a lot of new players. Like I said today earlier, I went to my local game store. I asked him, and he's a very hard person to convince to carry new games because he didn't want to fall into the whole trap of, well, it's a scam or whatever. So like these are the first 2 packs that his store sold because I know they're a little bit older at this point, but he bought from Distro, he bought some Uprising. And I'm glad that he finally got into the game because similar to that, when you try to bring a new player in, if you gave them a choice of this, I'm always going to recommend Phi over Dromai
Oh,
because
100%.
frankly, it's like a Katsu from WTR, and that means that any player can basically pick it up, and you're going to learn the fundamentals. Or similar to like the Ira deck, you're going to learn the fundamentals with that deck, and then if you want to explore another hero, you can go down that path without being frustrated that I don't know how the hell to do Ice Oldhim. Like I'd be a monkey humping a doorknob. I don't know how to play that deck, and I would probably do everything so wrong that somebody watching my video would just have an aneurysm and just yell at the screen until. Anyways,
No, no, I feel you,
uh,
man. And it's a lot easier when you're playing Fi too, when you're playing a bunch of other Fis, if that's like the most popular and if the meta is broken in such a way. I just thought it was an interesting concept. I mean, of course there's bad things with the whole thing where one hero dominates. Then if you're playing other heroes, it's just a total feels bad. I remember back when Chain was a thing, I was playing Bravo, and literally every game I was like, "Well, I'm going to block out. Good luck playing the game." Like it's basically all about like what your opponent does, because if they do good and they get the double art of war turn and they push over a ton of damage, then they win. But if they don't, then you win because you just block out every turn with your hand. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm glad to see though that the meta is very balanced at this current time, but it is hard like learning what like every different hero does and what the whole strategies are, because what people don't realize, not like on face value, is that different decks have different like builds. Like
mm-hmm.
Dromai, right? Someone recently, I think in the last 3 months, made the Aura Dromai deck, which is basically like just Prism, but with that other the weapon that attacks for 4. Like that is completely different than their dragon one, and same with Bravo. You can have like a very attack heavy Bravo or very defensive. And you have to kind of gauge what the current meta is and really what your opponent is coming at with you, because even though they put Bravo down or Dromai, you don't know what version they are when you're doing your side deck and everything.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that there's still some flexibility. Obviously, there's mains that people seem to go for, but that's one of the notes I was just writing down here to bring back up and talk in case we skipped over it. Is each hero has like a almost like a aggressive plan, a mid-range plan, and a defensive turtle plan.
Yep.
And then you have what I'm referring to as the jank plan, which is basically what I like to build because I just rather go in and just be like, surprise, I have an entire deck of generics. Ha ha, fooled you. Like from Spaceballs. It's like fooled you. But like it's just something fun that like people would expect. Now, obviously at a pro level, people aren't going to do that stuff, but like at a local armory, I very much enjoy just having the other person across me have the fuck face. Like, what did you just do? Because it's exciting to just play stuff that is not meta oriented, which is why I'm so happy about the mech build I'm trying to do. Like, I'm working on trying to understand like, can I throw in a bunch of generics with opt to basically just dig like as far as I can and try to get the pieces of Voltron out so that I can just turn into mech like turn 2 or 3 if that's even possible. I don't know if it is, but
That'd be
and that
nuts.
it's also kind of circling back. I have a friend, his name's Tim, he's in Wisconsin, my coworker. He mains Azalea,
Hmm.
and he for the longest time I don't believe was very happy with he couldn't win,
I
not
wonder
because he
why.
wasn't a good player, but just because the class was at such a disadvantage with some of the things. And even like I'm picking up all the Azalea cards right now so that I can prepare for the Outsiders set and try and make sure I have the core pieces, including that goddamn New Horizon, which I have words on that because I have a video that's coming out actually because my TCG order got canceled, so I lost
Oh,
mine when it was on the downswing, and then it went up, and then I didn't realize I ordered a bunch of stuff like in a short amount of time, and I didn't recognize that they canceled it on me, and then I went to go relook, and it went up like a $120 something above where I had bought it,
jeez.
and I was like, holy crap! So I ended up getting one at the Calling Indy, so I have it now, but it's just like, oh God, why? Uh,
It's crazy the card prices. They can like really fluctuate with each set, and it will be interesting to see what cards in the new sets, Outsiders and beyond, like old cards that were printed in that Welcome to Wrath booster box. You got which ones that weren't looked at for any other class, but hey, a new hero comes out and can utilize those old cards. And I think what is interesting too about the Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising, and of course I'm very biased because I own a lot of those sets. But they have the most generics than any other set in Flesh and Blood,
Bingo.
and that
Absolutely.
is something that people don't talk about too much. Like every other set has maybe, maybe what, 6 to 12 different generics, but
Yep.
with Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising, both have like what, 30 or some crazy amount. It's pretty high.
So actually, that's a great subject change here. Is so just today, it looks like they're. Do you keep up on the spoilers pretty much like instantaneously when they drop,
Yeah,
or do you? So Team Covenant today just revealed their single spoiler, which actually is a single pitch, but it's a series of.
it looks
There's
all
all
right.
three. What's up?
Oh, their spoiler, like the card looks all right. Like doesn't look too powerful.
Yeah, well, regardless of the power level, which I agree, I don't know where it would fit, but it gives me the warm and fuzzies that they're going to be back to the. Somebody said this set was supposed to kind of remind of the roots of Flesh and Blood, and well, if you go back to Arcane and WTR, the roots were I could draft generics until the third or fourth, the last round or whatever, and still be open. So I hope there is a shit ton of generics in this because that will just make my day. Now, whether or not that'll actually be true, I don't quite know, but I really hope that they bring a bunch of generics to the table, and I hope that they not will break the game because I want there to be balance, but the dual class aspect where you have like the assassin and ranger, where it locks it down to an intra class container, I think that that is a great way as the game goes forward to give certain abilities to certain classes or talents that share some pool, like a Venn diagram, so it'll like overlap a little bit, but then
Hmm.
the other section doesn't get access to that cool mechanic. And then if really it's like throwing a dart at a board because now they've added the stealth keyword, which on the surface means it does nothing, but if your hero ability interacts with a keyword, now they can start injecting random keywords as the game goes forward.
It's
And if
true.
your hero interacts with it, it can help that hero, but then it doesn't mean jack shit for anybody else who doesn't need it. So it won't break or like turn chain into some monster that can, eat your soul in a minute, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, or you could have like certain heroes that like maybe when they pitch 2 blue cards, they gain stealth, or when they,
Yeah,
do certain things, that hero gains stealth because of that hero ability, and that interacts with the card pool from the past.
the possibilities are pretty much endless.
They
And
are.
that does lead to the do you watch TCG Player very much?
Yeah.
So one of the most interesting things that I don't, and like you said, I don't know if a lot of people have talked about this, but Flesh and Blood is at the cusp of entering a new era, not only because I believe in the game, but truly a new era in regards to what they call product lines. So how I got to where this page is if you on TCG Player were to want to look at this, and I've been following it since day one,
Hmm.
but what you basically do is you go and you go to all cards. You don't filter on any game. And then once you're in there, I think I can actually zoom in on this and show you. So you would basically look at the categories of cards that exist. And
Hmm.
if you start at the very, very bottom, you'll get the most, TCG Player has one, then singles and alternatives. Lorcana now has 14. So see, look, they're in here, Keyforge. So as you scroll up, I have been slowly watching as this number has been increasing. And back when the game was newer, you'll see there's MetaZoo,
Is that just a
there's
different amount of product lines they have? Like it's a
yeah,
Yep.
so there are 3,334 products before Outsiders comes in there, which means that in the next set, if there's like 300 something cards, that's going to jump to something like 3,600 or closer to let's call it, they just be safe and call it even at the low end 3,500, okay, or 3,800. Now, if every set has, let's say, 300 or 250 or something cards, well, the WoW card game, which is another game that I kind of got into for a short amount of time, only had 4,736 before the game truly died, right?
Hmm.
So they are approaching this point where soon they will have more than WoW, which is two under Dragon Ball Super. Because once you pass that 5,000 card number, the next lowest game is like Dragon Ball Super, and then Force of Will is like 9,000. Then you get into Pokemon and Weiss Schwartz and Yu-Gi-Oh! Man, the big boy club, right?
Yeah.
And I think the moment they cross that threshold, that is where certain non-believers, I would say, have you heard about Flesh and Blood? Well, that's going to be the wake-up call that says, hey, you know, you thought this was a joke. It's here to stay. And I think, and that's why I've
It's the
been watching
game
that
that
number so
nobody
closely.
plays,
Yeah,
right?
it's a game that nobody plays. Let me show you the 491 plus people that were at the Indianapolis Calling. We actually outnumbered Magic players 2-1. No joke.
Jeez, really?
I,
I
I
didn't
I
hear
can
that.
visually prove with video and other things that I believe we were at a almost 2-1 ratio. Um, It was unreal.
That is
Unreal.
wild. I mean, the game just really has a great like overall gameplay experience, and I think that what Flesh and Blood has really captured on is just a competitive play. And I think that if you look at like a lot of the games out there now, I feel like they don't really focus hard on certain aspects. Like they try to be a multi-tool. They try to do all this different stuff at one time, and they just need to focus on something, you know, like in Flesh and Blood. It's like, okay, we want to make a really damn good game. We want it to be have competitive nature, and like we just want really solid gameplay, and they've just honed on that aspect, you know. No NFTs, no like extra product lines,
Please
no
no
all
NFTs.
these all this bullshit, you know, on the side. It's like they focused hard on making just a really damn good game, and it shows. And I think that they've really just captured a lot of the TCGs out there that have, you know, fallen before them. And you know, and especially like Magic trying to like get out of the like competitive organized play scene, and Flesh and Blood has just been there like with their hands out just scooping up players. And it's really awesome to see it grow. I mean, you were around back then in 2021 in the early part of it. You know, a gameplay video for Flesh and Blood didn't get too much views. You know, it didn't get that many people interested. I think there was a good amount of players playing the game, but I think a lot of them were in their local game store. They weren't really on the YouTube platform as much, but that has evolved tremendously well. Like the now in 2023 and late in 2022, gameplay videos get probably the most amount of views and sustained amount of views over time. Like it's very evergreen content where people want to like learn about it like years down the line. So it's just great to see how it's really, you know, evolved. And like I think that what people are going to finally realize is that the gameplay is really important in trading card games if you want them to succeed. And you know, other games, and I'm not just saying this because I love Flesh and Blood, but I do. But there's a lot of games like Star Wars Destiny, and you
Hmm.
got
And I went hard in Destiny. Like I
really,
have a
I've never even
lot.
played it.
Oh my, I have hundreds and hundreds of those dice. I even have a couple of sealed like boxes that I got so I could draft with my friends later.
Really?
And that just the game died before I could do something. Yeah, yeah, I love that game. It
And
was,
Netrunner was the same way, like just great game. And I've heard from multiple people, they say, I fucking hate Star Wars, but I love Star Wars Destiny. It was just a great game. And I've watched gameplay. It just looks so good. Like it was such a well developed game.
and yeah, I think it all boils down to what people enjoy. So to circle back on something that I think will kind of T-bone into what you that there you go, it's a card T-bone. It'll T-bone
Nice.
into your last segment there is basically Flesh and Blood has both a pro and a con with this professional circuit stuff. And here's why I say that. As a non-professional player, as a somebody who is more into the collectible aspect
Yep.
or the I would like to make content on stuff, or even I would love to do like news articles and stuff. It is so dang hard right now. One, when the company is doing everything good and doesn't do stupid stuff, because there's nothing to report on if you don't do dumb stuff, right? Like nobody wants to hear about, wow, this is the best thing since sliced cheese. Like that's not something that people are going
It's
to want to
true.
watch. And two, I think that the advent of, like you said, this evergreen content that exists, people watching gameplay videos, I try to consume some of that, but because it's so competitive, and one, the angles that people have, as an example, are not like me sitting at a table hovering over somebody and watching and getting to like ask questions and getting that personal, time. So for me, I don't like watching a lot of those videos because I'll have like a, hey man, why did that fork in the road exist versus like why didn't you do this? Because I would have done that. So why am I a dumb player and why are you a big brain, player for doing that? Um, but I kind of lost where I was
No,
going with
no,
this.
I
But
feel you, man. Like I personally, I don't really. It's hard to watch those videos as well. It's just like unless I'm trying to build a certain deck. Like I remember back in the day, I was trying to build Icelander. Like I think 6 months ago, and then I went out and looked for that content, and then would watch it. I think that's where these videos are getting views from. Is like new player comes in, they watch a professor's video, they get a blitz deck, they go online, how do I play Fi, and then they get gameplay videos and they watch and then they learn. And there's so much learning that you can do from that. And I think back in the day it was that aspect of people didn't have that initiative to try to learn, but I think you're getting a lot more of that. I think what's really brilliant too is you're getting a lot of people convert from just being pure collectors, investors into actual players. They play their games and it's just you get that itch to play again. And I think that a lot of TCGs don't have that in the industry because the gameplays aren't very well developed. The hallmark of a great game, I believe, is you play the game a couple times and you're like, I want to play more, or I want to play a different deck, or I want to, get more games in me.
I want
So
to deck tech something. Yeah,
yeah, man.
exactly. It's that trifecta. You obviously have, you got the players, the collectors, and the investors. I mean, there's really kind of that trifecta has to exist in my eyes. I mean, because you can't really, and this kind of goes down to the economic world, which I'm not a big, like, I don't know as much as I probably wish I could. I don't really try to stonk out everything, but I am definitely a little bit of all three because I love to play the game. I love to collect. Obviously, you saw some of the stuff I've shown you here. I mean, I collect nitpicky weird stuff. Like, I mean, from the calling indie, this is the dumbest but most cool thing. I watched people win the gold foils, right? And then as they open them, they basically, throw these stupid, like, the little here's my 9+ thing away. I'm never gonna get one of these, but this is the closest I'm ever gonna get,
They
and that
just
is
threw
the
that away?
coolest thing ever. Yeah, there was
Huh.
there was tons of them. They threw, like, one of the guys, like, had like 3 or 4. He bought them off somebody, and I don't know. I asked my LGS for the empty boxes of, like, their promo armory kits when they throw those away, and
Yep, I collect
um,
those as well. And dude, I'm the same way. There's this one Flesh and Blood event where they had like this really nice like LSS like envelope, and people like opened their cold foil, took it, and threw the envelope away. And I was like
is
digging
it
through
that
the
one?
trash. Yep, that
Yeah.
thing. That thing
So
looks so cool.
I got one of these, and then somebody was like, I bought a $79 pack of Arcane First, and I'm like, you're throwing away the pack you just spent $80 on? They're like, I don't, I just wanted the cards, and I'm like, can
Yeah.
I have it? I'm like, what is, people in Magic like pay hundreds of dollars for old Alpha Beta Unlimited packs, and I'm like, why not just keep? And it was just, it's funny. I don't know. It's weird to me.
No,
So,
dude, I'm the
anyways,
same way. I think the trash is underrated. Like, those throwaway things of games you think that aren't worth anything, but like I don't know, it just feels cool. Like, I don't know.
yeah, some of the rarest stuff. There was a game called Mage Knight. I don't know if you ever heard of that or
Yep,
not, but
yep, I
so
bought
yeah,
it.
I was fucking deep into that game, and I still have hundreds and hundreds of these figures. Some of the rarest stuff in that game is actually the promotional stuff that, like, people were like, here's a poster of this thing, or here's the special dial that says demo only that you got when you get into the store, and it was the here's how to play the thing, but the stats were actually originally different on that than something else. So, like, those are the things that, like, today some of the most hardcore collectors are going after because it was a thing, and
Isn't
now
that
it's not.
wild? Like,
And it's
that's also
yeah.
in the baseball card realm too. You've probably heard of the Honus Wagner baseball card. The reason why it's so valuable is because it was just in like a cigarette box, and he didn't want it to be out there, so they like recalled like some of his cards. So it's did you hear about that?
No, but I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds neat. It sounds like the bubblegum, like, cards back in the day, or where you get like a bubblegum stick in a card.
pretty much. Essentially, you get a baseball card and what is it? A pack of smokes. And Honus
Huh.
Wagner didn't want that, so they like stopped production of it. And like later, years later, like that's the most valuable trading card game in the baseball industry. It's like supposed to be like the heart of Fando, right? And
Wow.
yeah, it goes for like multiple millions of dollars of something that was like not supposed to be released or by accident. So
You
it's
got one or
crazy.
two of them then laying around
Oh, I
somewhere?
wish, man. I'd sell them for more Flesh and Blood. But
Oh man.
it is crazy. I mean, that's the type of stuff that you think about in like 10, 20 years that may have like different values that you see online, and it's just like it's really crazy. I mean, one thing that I like, one of my most cherished things, did I ever show you that this thing?
No, what is that? It has an LS. That's like an LSS folder. That thing is big.
So this is really cool, man. This I got this on eBay, I think like in 2021. So James White sent these out to all these different local game stores, and essentially it's just like an envelope saying, "Hey, like we hear you. We're a new trading card game. We want to what is it? Provide great value and bring people together in the Flesh and Blood." But
Yeah.
like basically it's just really cool. Like a lot of the LGSs, and Rudy's talked about it, and James White has talked about it as well. Like a lot of stores like turned them down, like 90%
Yeah, yeah,
plus.
yeah.
And like
Well,
this
even
is
some distributors turned them down too, and I think to this
Yep.
day they're still kind of not able to carry the product.
This is yeah, what he sent them all, and a lot of people threw them away. And yeah, I think it's like stuff like that, that
Well,
just
heck, now I need to go look for one because that's beautiful. Like that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. Like that is
yeah.
awesome. Like
It's
that's
just
amazing. I didn't even know that existed. Like I know the banner existed, and I went out and I think I got mine. It's actually in a post. Yeah, it's over here. I had to go to somebody in Canada to get like this is the one I have, and it's rolled up in it. So I'll pull it out every once in a while to put as a backdrop, and so I have a
nice.
permanent place for it. But I remember having to go to somebody, yeah, Quebec City, QC, Canada. I had to go get mine from Canada in order to even find one. And
Yeah,
but
they're
yeah,
hard to
there's
find.
there's literally no stores, and that's maybe another topic to touch on is so like I said earlier, I went to a store and I convinced him to purchase in and say, hey, let's buy some packs, let's get you in, here's some singles, get started, try to find some folks to play.
Hmm.
There are in Indiana's a little weird. I don't know how it is kind of down you're in Florida if I remember correctly,
Yep.
or right? So I don't know how many game stores are down there, but in Indianapolis alone I think there's probably 20 plus game stores maybe.
Wow.
Like, I mean, it is unbelievable the amount of store. Like, even within a geographic, like with 15-minute drive where I'm at, I could probably name Valkyrie's Vault, Games to Die For, Midwest Games, UNC. Then you got Family Time, you got Saltaire, you got Gamers Loot, you have Bulldog Gaming, you have Good Games Downtown, you have
Damn, man.
Midwest Games, you have
You guys got a
Morse.
good up there.
I there's probably another 7 to 10 like that are within like 1 degree out, like 30 minutes away. So I would say there's probably 20 to 30 game stores within an easy drive of me.
Hmm.
How many of those game stores do you think carry Flesh and Blood in Indiana?
Uh, uh, 15 of them. How many?
Lower. Sorry, lower.
Lower? 10?
Lower.
5?
There's at this point, I think one, two, three. I think there are four officially that will host Armory events, and that's what I'm gonna draw the line to say that they might carry the box, but for to participate as a community member, there are only three. Now there's four. I think there's four stores that are currently hosting events in the Indiana community, and then there is one that is beginning with outsiders. I don't know how they managed to get it because they are literally a not a store that anybody goes to. So I mean, I appreciate that they're trying, but like it's so weird that they got a pre-release, but some other stores didn't. But
Hmm.
yeah, there I would say only about 10, maybe 5 or 10% of stores that are actually carrying Flesh and Blood
Well,
in Indiana.
why do you think that? Like, I mean, I know from like I don't have much experience in this, and like store owner and everything, but I can imagine that store owners like foster a community, and if they have the Magic the Gathering people, they might not want to like, you know, do Flesh and Blood, and then it like scares away their Magic people. Like, do you think it's about that? Because I know that was big in the beginning of the game, where there's this kind of like a feeling there.
Well, I'm gonna state the cold hard truth that I think it is, and
Yeah.
whether or not this is true. Obviously, I will not name stores for ambiguity's sake or whatever to not put words in other people's mouths. But I am friends with a lot of store owners, and one of the problems is not that the game of, as an example, Flesh and Blood is not succeeding, but it is the fact that like the stonky era of stuff happened and they are scared shitless of what can happen to the game. They were
That's
stuck with
fair.
stock they couldn't sell, or you had those that, and I won't name the other game, but the one that ends in zoo. Basically they bought into stuff like that and they were stuck with lots and lots of things that they couldn't even use to build a cardboard house to light it on fire to keep themselves warm at night.
Yeah, that's
Um,
sad.
and while I appreciate each of these games for what they are, and I appreciate that not all of them are going to be the same for every user, there are certain store owners that have verbalized to me that they would like to try to get into the game, but when you look at the crowd in Indiana, there's only so many individuals, and right now they're all trying to the stores that are there. I'm not saying are fighting for the time, but you have
Oh,
you
they
can
for
really
sure
only
are.
have you can really only have 6 official days a week that a store can host something. Obviously, the most cherished are
Yeah.
probably Friday, Saturday, and maybe Monday or Sunday, depending on like, those 4 days of the week are gonna be your cherished ones that people are trying to go, and we already have 4 stores that are basically claimed on Friday, Monday, Sunday, and on a Wednesday, actually. So there's technically Tuesday and Thursday that are open. So you really have probably room for 2 more communities to spin up.
Hmm.
But unlike where I'm hearing in a lot of the Facebook groups where you have, let's say, 20 or 30 people showing up to armories, or 15 to 20 consecutive people, the armories that I'm seeing, you might have, I think I had one that we went to was a little bit further south, um, 5 people, 4 people, and that was a good night, or you might have the one that's up here, you might hit 8 people. And then for a major event, obviously you can maybe hit a little bit higher than that. But still, it's like, I don't think there's enough people to warrant the cost benefit analysis of saying, yeah, I know Magic's going to sell, but with Flesh and Blood, I can only sell it to a couple of locals, but then I'm stuck selling it online. And I think that's the
Yeah.
the barrier right now.
Well, I mean, I think the heart of what you were talking about is like stores invested heavily and stuff went south. And I feel for stores, man. I feel like I was talking to what is it, James Lockwood from the Haven Games, a really great game store near me. I support them in ways I
Support your
can.
LGS.
Yeah, dude, for sure. And like he was like, yeah, I have to be like fucking Nostradamus with like ordering different, boxes because it's like you have to put in your pre-orders for different games like
Months in
months in
advance.
advance, and the public doesn't understand that. So if you 6 months ahead of time pre-order something of Magic or whatever, and then
And
the
the
date
set
comes and the
bombs.
set bombs, you are screwed. Like you have to
Crimson
pay for that.
Vow, that's
Yeah.
a good example of one. Or there was a Pokemon set like Chilling Reign, nobody cared about, right?
Yep.
But then all of a sudden in the last like 2 months, people are like, oh, it's the golden era of, the Sword and Shield, and now people want it all of a sudden. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
yeah, very much. You're basically
It's
playing the
tough.
gambler's market.
Yeah, and
Roll a dice.
that could really like put you out of business if you just get a couple bad calls like in a row. And with Flesh and Blood, yeah, I mean you did have that era of 2021 where what was it, I think Tails just like that's when like the money train stopped. And I think
So
that
let's.
hmm?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, like I think the biggest thing we can all take away from this, right, is that there's a lot of personal responsibility I think we have to have as, stewards of our own money. And if everyone out there is chanting like, money, like, goes burr and all these boxes can just only go up and it's gone up the last 3 sets. If things are too positive around you, then it might not like go towards that way in the future, like there's a very popular saying as well that I like with investing is that you buy on the cannon, sell on the trumpets, meaning you buy when everyone's panicking and freaking out, and then you sell when everyone's feeling good and happy. And it's a very hard thing to do as an investor because you have to go against your human biology, where if you feel like shit, you probably want to sell, but you should probably be buying in those moments. But if you feel happy, that's when you sell instead of buying more. So I feel for
What do they
those
call that?
stores.
Diamond hands, hold forever. Hold.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's just to get people to hold their bags. But I feel for the stores, but I really hope that they at least like get the bare minimum to get their armory promos and get people in their stores. I mean, the Haven Games near me, they have so many different games. They're doing the new that anime one, GA, forgot what it stands for.
Oh, Grand Archive?
Yeah, Grand Archive. They're
Yeah,
getting
so
big into that, and they're buying a bunch.
there's a lot of
Doing a
these
lot.
TCG Kickstarter ones that are coming out, and I'm curious to see them, but I purposely didn't back some of them, and or if I did back them, I only back for like the starter decks.
How dare you?
Not because, yeah, because I want to just play. I don't want to be like, let me have thousands of boxes to be like, yeet. But my opinion is I would rather wait. I think Sorcery just did this with, and it was even Team Covenant. I think they just announced that they were going to do like a beta run or something with through them or something. I don't know
Yeah,
the details, but it's interesting to see some of these other games that are trying to break into markets. And but yeah, it's
yeah.
just
I mean,
chaos.
I just think if you're a store, like it's good to diversify. Like
Oh yeah,
you don't have to
absolutely.
go too hard into Flesh and Blood, but you know, just having some type of small position in it, along with a lot of other games, just to broaden your horizons, I think just attracts a lot of customers. Put a lot of
There was
different scents out.
one store that regretted not getting in, that I've talked to, that
Oh yeah,
I can confirm said, "Man, you said this to me, and I really wish I would have got in." So that was interesting to hear that from him. Hindsight, seeing where the game is, which leads me to Flesh and Blood 2.0. So
ooh,
we are deep within Flesh and Blood 2.0 territory now. Do you feel it helped the game, or do you feel that it was, some other variation of it maybe helped, but it didn't help as much as it should have? What's your
hell
thoughts?
hell yeah, it helped tremendously. And I think the biggest thing of 2.0 is combining first edition and unlimited. And I think before you had so many people, and it was so fucking annoying hearing like, oh, you have player investors, or no, investors and collectors, and then players on the other side, and you have two separate products for it. And it was just you heard a lot of that chatter, and it was kind of weird. But now just having it one product just makes it so good. I feel like just having one box, and you don't have to worry about like one box versus the other. It just makes it a solid product. What about you? I think that was the
What do you
main
feel
point.
about the pull rates? So, like, if I were to open this uprising pack, is are we thinking, like, are the legendaries too hard to hit? Are the cold foils, are we warranting, like, I don't even know. Oh, so I definitely didn't get a cold foil in this one because there's a
So
hero's might.
I think the pull rates are tougher where it's more of a lottery. Like you could get a case and you could get like five legendaries or three legendaries, something ridiculous. And then you can get other cases with like no legendaries. So you have a lot of that going on more than where Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising Unlimited were more like you were going to at least get one legendary, possibly two per case. Usually one legendary per case is what you would get. Um, but I feel like they've made it a lot more like randomized where you could just get like nothing in a case, which feels bad. And I did
And
hear for Monarch Unlimited, there was this one store that opened like I think six cases and got like one legendary, and I was just like, oh
I
geez,
feel like that happened with Dynasty, and I don't know what they did and how that shook out, but I opened a pretty decent chunk of Dynasty, and like I was missing basic Majestics, which is opposite of hitting Legendary, but like the standard I think it was like Rock, just the regular Rock Majestic. I didn't hit a single one out of any of my boxes.
jeez,
And I was like, that's so weird. But then I hit like six Hanabi blasters. So it's like there's almost like the pendulum swung, and then in some regard, it almost swung too hard with that. And I think for outsiders, I think they swung it back, which is why there's only three the marvels, which is that's what investors and collectors are chasing for, right? Like
yeah.
that's what everybody wants. By the way, seeing that in person at Indy, that the cold foiling, oh man. Once
Oh,
you see that
with the
with your own
outsiders,
eyeballs, holy crap.
that Marvel looks
Um,
so good.
yes, people were trying to maybe poo-poo on it, but honestly, I think it is, even if it's not what people expect, I feel like that idea is just such a beautiful concept to be like, it's now a piece of art. I want that piece of artwork, like
Oh yeah, me too,
hands
man.
down.
It just looks so beautiful. And then like it comes right from the lore book. I feel like the lore book had like a couple pages of that where it's like oh botany and these different like animals and describing things in a journal, but like those cards are great. And what I like about it is it looks like there's only 3, which I think is
Yes.
perfect. I didn't like the whole dragon feel when you got
Dragons for
like
everybody. You get a dragon, and you get a dragon, and
yeah.
you get a dragon.
Well, because some of them like are like $20, and it's like you could pull a $20 dragon or a $200 dragon. So it felt weird. You're like, I want to be happy about this, but I'm
I've never
not.
hit the $200 dragon. Tell you
Me
that.
neither.
Never. Nope,
I've
not
I've
me.
hit two $20 ones, and it's like I want to be happy, but then I'm like, wait a minute, is this is this the majestic one? I look, I'm like, oh nope. So I'm glad they moved it to where that is reserved in this new set outsiders for this is a really good hit. When you see that card, like it doesn't matter if you have like really bad vision, like 20/50 vision, you know that you hit something good. So I like
Oh,
that.
absolutely. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
And that does lend itself into the next kind of catalog with the 2.0 thing is that, I think that one interesting side effect of that is the commons and rares. are more readily available to players as needed because of the collectors and the, I'll even go so far as to say like Fab Unsealed and the other whatnot guys and some other people out there that are mass opening these cards to hit that 1%,
Yep.
because now there's so much extra cards that exist that players can get what they need without really having to worry too much about things being absorbently high. But that's where the rainbow foil and the cold foil version of legendaries is a great add. I think, I hope they keep that going forward, because you know a $25 or $30 legendary to play with and maybe a $75 or $200 legendary to collect is a great divide to me. Like, I like that
Absolutely.
because I'm good. Like I said, my goal, one of everything for me to play with, and even if that's a $20 one, I don't care. I'm gonna have to play with.
Yeah, no, it just made it a perfect thing because you'd have like before where the Monarch first edition box was way higher than the unlimited one, and we also what happened. Everyone wanted the first edition. It turns out players like making money too. Who knows? Like, who
Yeah,
knew,
I
right?
know.
So, oh no, and it makes sense. Like, and it's great to see. Like, I've heard so many different stories, man, where like a player goes to a pre-release event, right? Pulls like a $300 card and then sells it to a collector and then makes a lot of money and then buys cards that they want to actually play the game. Like they buy like the ninja legendaries for the price of a cold foil, random card that they like a fable that they weren't going to use anyway. So, it helps fund their game. And when they're trying to get out of the game as well, like collectors and investors and other players are there to, get their cards. So,
And
it's a great environment.
I won't say numbers because I was there and I heard things, but I will say that like it leads into exactly like as an example, Michael Hamilton won, the calling Andy. So congrats, Michael Hamilton. If you
He's
ever
a
do see
beast,
this,
man.
basically, he got an offer for that. I think it was the Crown of Providence. Like literally, he like. If you imagine this being the backdrop where you're getting interviewed, it
Hmm.
was like lift up, walk one step, and then like 15 people be like, money, just like chimpanzees throwing like turds at a wall. It was unbelievable. But anyways, I believe the transaction occurred, and I will leave it at that. But it's just you do have that thirst for those exotically high end cards, and I will let those rich 1% take what they need there, and I will remain in my humble little bubble of enjoying my rainbow foils, which I think are very undervalued, by the way, from the original non 2.0 sets. I feel like that's something that recently has been spiking hardcore. If you
The
have
rainbow
seen any of
foil
that,
weapons.
any rainbow foils from WTR Crew, Arcane, I would even go so far as to say Monarch first
Oh
and
wow.
Tails first. I think almost all those because there's not a lot of them.
I
I
haven't
think I think there's a significant decrease in the quantity compared to what people perceive to exist.
I haven't heard that, but I do know that like one thing that got released is that the rainbow foils will not be reprinted in any other set like going forward. So we saw Scar for Scar being reprinted in I think
Ding, ding,
Dynasty,
ding.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you
And
actually just hit the nail on the head of one of the questions I was going to ask you today, which is why I asked about packs. That's why I
woo,
bought Uprising, actually, as I was hoping to hit one in these packs to demonstrate something, and I don't know if we
yeah,
did. If not, I have one.
you can't hit the rainbow foil that. It's just normal foil or it's
E-
non-foil because they aren't going
Exactly.
to make that version ever again. And I think that that's another sleeper topic as well. And something that Saint talked about in one of his, how he like mass opened Crew Unlimited.
Oh yeah, yep.
I thought it was cool how he noted that the weapons in Crew Unlimited were the
They're short
rainbow
printed.
foil ones were short printed. I thought that was very interesting. Like that.
I'm proud to say that I have known that for probably either equal amount of time or longer than him, mostly because I was buying bulk
Hmm.
and I discovered that there wasn't any. So I went out and I was buying my copies and a couple of spares so that I could have to provide as like a play set to what my opinion would be is if I wanted a PvE player set of four for I'm assuming four people going PvE, so I could have everybody could have a weapon, and yeah, I discovered that about the same time. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different things like that, where there's these different things that people have like knowledge of and making positions and buying, but we haven't seen too
Knowledge is
many.
power.
Yeah, it for sure is. Knowledge is money too. And
So
like,
that leads in. Oh, go ahead.
oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh, so that leads into the question I was going to ask you. So this is Scar for Scar, and you'd mentioned that it
Yep.
was. So I don't. Do you know how many times this was printed, by the way?
History pack,
So
uh,
there. Yep,
Ira
history
welcome
pack.
deck.
Yeah, ding ding. Yep, that was correct, I believe. And then I think there is, if I remember right, there's one in obviously WTR, which has the regular and rainbow. You have the uprising, which is the single,
Yep.
and then I believe there's
Katsu.
one in a blitz deck, if I remember correctly. So there's like 4 or 5 variations of this at this point.
Hmm.
But because this was printed in uprising, and it is typically, even though it's not a ninja card, it's generic, but it was printed in uprising. Do you feel, or would you put money that Scar for Scar, which is typically a ninja style card, will it be in Outsiders? I actually am voting no, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
I don't think it would be an Outsiders. It's just printed in Dynasty, so I'd imagine there's a good amount.
But
If
what? But would there be a good case to have it because it typically is such a I don't want to say staple ninja card, but it seems to always be in a ninja deck.
oh, I get you because there's going to be
Because of the
Katsu and
draft
Benzi,
experience and because it's generic, I thought
maybe.
maybe it would be in there, but then it's like that would be a reprint of a reprint of a reprint of a reprint in such a very short set. It's like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I hope there's another surgical extraction in the next set, man. Like that's the card that really needs to be pumped out there.
I don't know how they're gonna fix
I
that.
hope they put it in the Blitz deck. I am telling you on camera. I hope they put it in the Blitz deck for Arachne. That would
I
be great.
chef's kiss. I love it. Because the good news is, like, I looked at that card and said I need it, but I refuse to spend the amount of money that that card
Same.
is currently at. And I feel that there was something wrong based on my perception of how many times when I was opening Dynasty, like why was I getting Regicide but not Surgical Extraction? And I was lucky enough to open one foil and one non-foil, and I was like, well, that's for my set, so I'll keep that. And then I was not going to buy another one until I figured out what the hell was going on. So
Yeah, yeah, and I heard online like a couple people were saying that before it got announced that it was short printed and it was what is it, swap places on the printing rack with Regicide, but yeah,
yeah, it sounds like
it's
that was a last
unfortunate.
minute change So
Yeah. I mean, the good news is Arachne isn't very like top tier so far. And I don't know if
but
it
it could
is.
be.
Yeah, 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 that's true. I guess we'll see once surgical extractions printed in mass, but yeah, man. The reprint stuff is very interesting because I think they haven't really reprinted too many cards. I think Sigil of Solace
It
is definitely something that they could do again. And a couple
Another card
others.
sitting to my right over here. I was just sorting, so like hypothetically, I don't know if this is going to come across. I'll show you on this. See this whole stack of here? This is
Yep.
after going through a couple of boxes of bulk. But like this is all like that's Fate Foreseen, Sink Belows,
Hmm.
Razor Reflexes, the cards that people typically like, hey, I need 3 of these cards to play. And what I've been doing is as I have been, sorting, so there's pummels, energy potions, time snaps. I personally collect the drone of brutality, so I'll probably never
Yeah,
sell any of
same.
the drones because it's just a card that I'm glad it's banned, but like at the same time, I'm like I want to create a Flesh and Blood cube. There's actually a guy out there trying to figure this out, but I want to make a way to kind of take cards like this and recreate the packs, and then be able to say like, oh, you need to have these stacks, and then take shuffle this up and take one from here to create your pack, and then you get one ninja, one warrior, one whatever. So you can kind of recreate a box because again, in 5-10 years, I don't know if these are going to exist. So there's some mathematic way to figure that out. Anyway, so like a lot of these cards, as I've gone through, again, 5-6 months, a year ago, I would say, even so close as to, yeah, even 6 months to a year and a half ago, those were bulk. Nobody cared about them. They
Yep.
were in the bulk boxes I was buying. And now Sync Blows are like $1 a piece. Fate for Scenes are like $1 a piece. And it's like for every 10 or 20 that you find in a 6,000 count UPS box, if you're buying it for 50, 60, $80, whatever that box is, depending on who you're buying it through, that could be just those 10 cards could pay for half of the box just right there, right off the bat.
Yeah, and all it takes is time, really. Time moves
Hmm.
on. Cards like get more valuable over time, depending on the metas and different strategies that evolved. I mean, one big one is Wounded Bull. Like that thing was
Look
bulk
at
for the
that one.
longest time. Yeah, and like Michael Hamilton started running it, and maybe someone else did before him, but then that card became expensive. Like, or it's probably like a solid dollar, right, for a red wounded bull. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know the exact cost on it, but I'm sure it's something in that tune. It's a seeked card. People want it. I get requests for it a lot.
yeah. So it's just wild seeing how it evolves over time, man.
Well, and in even all your stuff in your bulk, I mean, hell, I'm sure you have a fat stack of alpha sinks and alpha. I'm sure that you have a nice, array of things. So when you start thinking like, it doesn't sound like a lot to people, I think, but like you'll probably appreciate this statement. But like when you start looking at like 1,000 count box of cards, and you're like, okay, here is 1,000 of a thing, and then you're like, okay, if there's 200 cards in the set, statistically, if you divide 1,000 by 200, it's what, like five? So you should have, on average, five of every of that card. Well, when you multiply that out and say, okay, now I have 50,000 cards, well, 50,000 divided by 300 or whatever, you'll have 30, 40, 50 copies of a card at any given time, theoretically. Some a little bit more than others, depending on print cycles and who's picked through what and pulled good stuff out. But at a certain point, if you have 1,000 of a certain card, I don't think I'm going to need any more of that unless it's a playable card, like, but it's people don't necessarily always realize that some of the older stuff, like I said, even with the Alpha book, I'm sure, they're probably,
Really adds
you just
up.
like, oh my gosh, I found one. Or the thrill of like just searching through. Um, I do this once well, I sort cards every night, which is probably a crazy thing, but this stack here
Hmm.
is all Majestics, super rares, and stuff that I have found through bulk boxes that I have bought.
Oh,
Like
nice.
it have been left in through like oopsie doopsies. So like Insidious Chill, not a very expensive one. Liquefy, Uprising. There was a Pursuit of Knowledge and a Crazy Brew.
Hmm.
So again, nothing crazy, but then every once in a blue moon, you'll hit gold. Like this is a cold foil quelling robe.
Oh,
Again, a
nice.
common, but it's just like, when you see that, you're like, oh, I hit the lottery, I'm a winner. You dance and you're like excited. I don't know. That's the way I am with it,
Dude,
man. So
I'm the same way. Like I bought a couple of collections like when I first started back in 2020. I was like opening like all like going, sifting through the cards, sorting them out, and then like I think I got a cold foil like Mage Masters boots, and I was just like, "Oh shit. Like
wow.
that is amazing." It's just that is the fun part of buying bulk collections is when you do find those like little things like, that you weren't expecting that someone missed. And cold foiling is hard like if you're not trained in it and like Flesh and Blood is your first TCG, I feel like it can like you can miss stuff like that. But
And I have seen that happen. People open pack and I see a cold pull and they're like, "Oh, this sucks." And I'm like, "Really? You just had a cold pull? What?"
yeah,
You have to explain it, and then they're excited, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, there you go. Your first one. Slow claps. You're good."
yeah. I
Which
mean,
actually leads. Oh, go ahead.
like, and it's great. Like with us, like I feel so fortunate getting into the game so early on, and just like not only being part of the community, but just like buying stuff I want and like getting stuff early on. And I don't know about
Trinkets are
you,
cheap right now.
what?
Trinkets are cheap, or the items
Yeah.
from Everfest are cheap.
They were pretty cheap. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I've been just buying a lot in the last 3 years, and I'm probably gonna slow down a little bit now since I've like got so much stuff. But like, I'm just thankful that I was around so early on to like get certain deals here and there, especially in the last year, man. 2022, people
There's some
people
weird
offloaded.
pricing. Do I have it sitting? I have it sitting next to me. So at the Calling Indie, I was hanging out with I think it was a group called Tavern Brawlers. I don't know if you've heard of them or not.
No, no,
So they're kind of a different. I think they have a YouTube, or maybe they definitely they're more of a tournament oriented. But they host online things. They have a Discord and stuff like that. But between them and a couple other players, I went around and I was like, hey, I really need to bulk up my Majestics and super rares and things because I have all the commons for days, I have all the rares for days, but I didn't have a lot of that mid tier stuff that even if it's not playable now, it may be later.
yeah,
So I kind of started poking around and asking, and I ended up leaving the calling with somewhere in the ballpark of about 1,000 Majestics and super rares that I purchased from various folks. And my grand total for that was a astonishingly low number because
yeah.
I was buying everything that was like 15 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents, like or lower. And it just, it's 50 cents now, but maybe in another year and a half, that card, or I still swear to God, one day Rusted Relic will be useful. I wait to the day. I know there will be, if Alchemist comes out, I will find a way to make that card useful.
Dude, that is so smart. I've been doing the exact same thing. I've got like 2 BCW card boxes full of Majestics. Been buying them for like 10, 15, 20 cents because now they might not be useful, but who knows? Like this game has so many years in the making. Like 20 cent for Majestic is too low.
And I have a,
I'm calling bullshit. I'm buying those cards.
I agree, and I have a rule for those of you that are be like, you're an evil investor, you're not good for the
How
game.
dare you?
I have a rule that if I look and I see somebody on TCG Player has 100 or 50 or some stupid number of them, yeah, I will buy a majority of that from one vendor. Versus I'm going to go through and say, oh, here's 25 at 20 cents. If I'm going to buy something, I'm going to make sure that the players still have access to a sufficient quantity of it because I still want to not shoot the game in its foot.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I have seen people do some weird buyouts recently that I've been tracking. So that's actually something I guess I could spoil here. I am actively working to get pricing data from several sources so that I can create either an application or a website or a template that is going to have like a historical tracker of like, I guess general sales volumes and numbers of Flesh and Blood cards, but
Hmm.
also have like a historical price marker to say like this Majestic was 20 cents, 20 cents. Oh, and then the Outsiders got announced and it went to 50 cents. And then, oh, it
That
was
sounds
50 cents
cool.
for three more sets. And then the next set, it no longer was in meta. So it went back down to 20 cents. I Similar to like Magic Goldfish is a good example of somebody
Oh
that could
yeah.
probably do this much simpler than what I could. I'm not a programmatic guy, but just getting the access to the data and the pricing and the quantity sold and the how much they sold for will help kind of give some ebbs and flows for folks to hopefully maybe start seeing some of these trends. And that's a goal I would like to see because that's data I would love to have, but I don't think anybody's doing that right now. So I the closest was like when
No, I
Louis
don't
from
think
Kitchen
so.
Table TCG was doing his like um, price tracker.
Hmm.
He had some stuff in there, but I don't think he was tracking like sales volumes and long term. I think it was more shorter uh,
Oh yeah,
box
shorter
only type
term.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds cool, man. Like especially like figuring out because then you can see like if any certain amount of quantity sold at a certain period of time, even like
Yeah,
as
like
the sets
Outsiders
release.
gets announced, and all of a sudden, 700 Ranger Majestics just disappear from the market, all
Yeah.
in 30 seconds. It's like one. There was one, and I was literally about to punch my computer screen. I think it was when the Emperor got announced, or something. There was one of these spoilers during last spoiler season. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to buy a couple of these, and I kept going to TCG Player and going to check out and buy and check out and buy. And I
Hmm.
wasn't trying to buy a lot. I was only buying one or two, but it literally kept saying, "I'm sorry, this is not out of stock. I'm sorry, this is not out of stock. I'm sorry, this is not." And I'm like, "What in the actual hell is happening?" And after math, I looked like 2 days later, and it was just a a,
Getting
a
attacked.
gauntlet of like it just sold out, and I was like, "Well, that's the world we live in now. Thanks,
But yeah, and
appreciate
it's
it."
also important for people to realize that so many different times in Flesh and Blood's history, certain cards got to like insane amounts and then they just plummeted.
Only to fall back
Yeah,
down.
one
Skull
what
Cap's a great example.
that's a great example, but do you remember the Talisman of Dowsing? This $50 rainbow foil rare card that has a shitty ability went to $50 and now it's like $3. And
Is
it
that
is
for Monarch?
it is for Monarch, and what was cool about it is it had like a secret like message. And Kale from Dead Summer Art YouTube channel figured it out. And there's an article on one of the Flesh and Blood article
I'm gonna have to
what
find
pages.
that.
I'll ping it to you afterwards, man. It's
Yeah, I'd
really
love to read
dude,
that.
it's really cool. It basically says like the treasure is in the kingdom in the forest or something. It's like hidden in the Talisman of Dowsing, and it was thought of that the Talisman of Dowsing, the rainbow foil one, was short printed, but I don't think it was. So
Oh,
people
and
spec on that shit so hard it went to $50, a hype, and they bought on the trumpets, and then the cannons hit, and people lost interest, and that's what happens in these what is it when sets gets released. Certain cards just get bought out, but then sometimes it doesn't really pan out very well. And who benefits from this? Players benefit and stores benefit because they sell out of all their stock. And yeah, those cards could stay at those inflated prices for a while, but sometimes they don't. And Skullbone Crosswraps was the card you were talking about earlier. That's a really important one. Yeah, it was at $30 for a while, went to 100, but then it retraced down to like 50 or something. So it's interesting how like things price fluctuate depending on intermittent demand based on time period.
Sure. Now, hey, if you go look at your screen real quick, I'm showing the back of
Yeah,
a card, and I remember, weren't you the one that kind of big brain figured out that there was some hidden messages inside of this with the writing? Like
yeah,
that was awesome. Like I started trying to examine these because you don't really think about looking at the back of cards that often, but and I started looking at them like there's class symbols and there's things that really kind of almost gave you some insight to what might be coming. Like there's the ranger symbol, there's other things that are on here that I'm sure will mean something one day. But can you give me any backstory on how you managed to actually decipher this? What to me looks like chicken scratch or a doctor's signature.
yeah. So a lot of people just to preempt this, like when people ask me like why I'm so in love with Flesh and Blood, that really got me into the like really just loving the game. I was like, holy cow, like that was brilliant to put in on like the back of a card. And there's a lot of depth to the lore and everything. But anyway, in on the back of every Flesh and Blood card on the bottom, it has two scripts. So there's a script on the bottom for Demonistry and then a script on the top for Solana. These are two separate languages in Flesh and Blood, and you can see that they're on a bunch of different card art, like Dorinthia's art. On the very on behind Dorinthia, there's like a pillar, and it has like the Solana script. And then in Demonistry, I think the rune chant also has that script. So basically, I saw all this stuff and I started deciphering the code and figuring out what the languages mean. At the time, Demonistry's language was very more readily available because on the box of Arcane Rising, it has this like a script on the top and on the bottom. But basically, on the bottom, it says, "Darkness is the canvas of the universe," and then up here it says, "Light is the brushstroke of creation." And I think I was like the first person to figure that out, and I messaged LSS and like, oh wow, I can't believe, I can't believe you deciphered that. It was tough, man. I honestly, it took me like 4 full days of like deciphering all the texts, and then a lot of times, like on the top of it, it's really hard. I had to guess like 3 letters at the end on the very top, and like it was pretty intense, but I did it, and when I did, I was like, wow, like that is really cool. So it's like kind of the battle here from light and dark, you know what I mean?
And
But
that's awesome. And I guess
thanks.
that was even kind of preemptive. You think about it, that's they had to have known that because that was on WTR when that was
Yes.
before Monarch even existed. So thinking about this thematically and back to the lore book, and that is one kind of devastating thing for me is I don't know if they're ever going to release one. So I don't know how the heck I'm going to get a copy of that. But
I
that is
think they
one.
are.
er,
I think it's in the plannings. When I was talking to people at Legend Story Studios at Worlds, I believe it's and I think they've announced that like they're just doing all the other stuff first, like making their
Sure.
ninth set. But like you pointed out too as well, there's like symbols around this circle. Those have not been revealed yet. Also, like on the very outside, it's like all 8 regions, which is cool. Something I just kind of noted recently, I think I don't know if anyone's really talked about this yet, but you know how we've gone from Aria to Volcor, and then on the very bottom here is the pits. Like I think we're going sets at like in the order of the card back. I don't think many people have realized that.
So where's my mech coming in? Is that coming up next? Because that'd
Nah,
be great.
that's the last. That's
Damn
the
it.
last area, all the way up
They're
here.
gonna they're gonna have to. I want somebody to living legend my dash out so that they're forced to give me a hero because they literally can't be like, I'm sorry, there's absolutely no mech that you can play now because that is the only class that I believe has a single solo CC hero at this point.
Unless you want to play the 3 intelligence Data Doll and Blitz, but yeah.
Well, but they got rid of the rule. I think you can't play youngs in CC anymore, if I remember
Oh
right.
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, I think people were abusing that because they're bringing young Prism and be like, "Oops, where we go?
Yeah, I think
Yeet."
didn't someone win a classic constructed
I
tournament with a
think
young
they
prism?
did.
That's nuts. That is nuts.
Boy. Oh man, so I got something else to show you that I actually
Yeah.
got because this is it's a pet peeve of mine and I don't know where to take it. So I'm gonna zoom into a camera and show you. So this is a package that I got, and
Oh.
um I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I'm gonna do a whole video on this, but I might as well at least break the spoiler here and discuss it because this came from Etsy, and this person created these tokens of these heroes. And the problem is, in my eyes, they used the same art that LSS used, but made a full art token of it. And then for those that didn't have like a full thing, they were at least gracious enough to put this proxy word on it. But there are some cards floating around, and I do have one in my possession of some of these Chinesium,
Oh,
very high
fake
quality
cards.
fakes that scare the ever living piss out of me because I almost got burned buying some cards and I think one of them was a fake. So what's your thoughts on the like the usability of like using this art that obviously is owned by an artist that LSS commissioned, that basically folks are doing these what would almost seem like to me a devaluation of like if I owned a cold foil of that card. Obviously that holds some real world value, but then obviously there are people that will never be able to afford those. So I see the desire for this, but it's the
Yeah.
exact same artwork. So
Honestly, if you're thinking of reproducing things like let's talk about what you just showed me. Like those things are pretty cool, but unfortunately, you can't do that unless you have Legend Story Studios permission because like they own all the artwork for all those things. Unless you're doing like a completely new artwork and then on the back you don't have the Flesh and Blood card back. I could see how you could get away with that because you're basically putting all this new artwork. You might just have the same like type of hero name. I think you could get away with that without crossing any boundaries. But if you reprint their images, that's Legend Story Studios intellectual property, and intellectual property is really important. I mean, a lot of times like companies, they have to sue
have
other
to
companies to just
protect their
protect their
IP. Yeah.
IP and trademarks, and if they don't, there's like the whole legal system in that is if you don't protect it, then you lose it. So I think that if you're going about it I think Legend Story Studios, they're so chill. Like if you're as long as you're trying to help the community or the money's going back to some people, they're good for that. People might not like that, but it's like it is how it is. And a lot of times like the artists, you could be taking money from them. Like if you want some nice like artist print or something, you go straight to the artist for Legend Story Studios. And I think Legend Story Studios lets the artist reprint their artwork that they made them, and sign it and do all this stuff and sell it to the community. So I think the artists should be really the ones who are making those pieces available to people to buy, like little things like tokens and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, I think the fakes, going onto that, like it is getting a lot scarier. It is, you are able to see the difference between each one when you look at a card side by side with a real one. But yeah, it's concerning. And I have heard a story, and I haven't confirmed it, but I did hear of a story of someone was in a high important event in Flesh and Blood, and they got booted out because they had two fake Art of Wars in their deck, and they didn't know that. They said they bought it online, and it's like, but it was a fake card, and you're playing with fake card. You can't do that in a tournament, so they were booted out. So it's scary. It hurts everyone. It hurts players. It hurts stores. Hurts investors and collectors. So that for
Yep.
sure is like the most evil. But proxies, it's like, okay, but you really do have to get permission from Legend Story Studios if you're reprinting their artwork. I mean, what do you think about the topic? I know I rambled a little bit.
No, you're good. I love the thought. Now here I want to show you. I know I'm showing you a lot of stuff, so I apologize
No,
for
you're
making a
good,
turn. But
man.
here on your screen, I got two cards. I think you might have recently done a video on some of this, and the
Yep.
reason I personally, and here I'm going to go back to my face for just a second. The reason I personally was so hesitant about discussing or making a video on proxies is because as an individual that is in the market to sell singles, to work with the community and say, go out of my way to make sure that I'm getting real stuff for people. If I started being like, hey, I bought some proxies or some fake cards, like people would be, I would assume, up in arms, like,
Yeah.
hey, why the hell are you doing that? My sole reason was I got this, and it is specifically here. I'll go back to this camera to show you. I purposely bought one of these, and you'll notice these cards are already cut, right? Like I
Yep.
made sure damn well that these are never going to see the light of day to anybody else. But I needed to determine with my own eyeballs, could I recognize a fake? And the sad part is, no, I can't.
Yeah.
I have a digital microscope too, but like this fine center is the fake card and this payload's the real card. But when I look at the back of these things, I ripped the payload in half to see maybe if the paper was, and you'll see it's black core. This over here is black core. I mean, it's ridiculously disturbing how close these are
Yeah.
with what they can be. And basically, I had bought a playset of them just to see, like I said, and show you all here, they're all cut in half. But the whole point of me understanding that is because as a person who wants to buy the higher tier cards, if I don't understand what I'm getting into and I'm getting duped because somebody is selling me a screwed up card, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? Because no one's going to buy it for me, and now I'm out the money. So it's this weird, like, odd piece. But to go back into the art aspect of it, LSS is great to work with, and I mean that honestly. And I can say from personal experience, because another thing to demo here is if I show you this, this is a 3-dimensional dice that I created in Fusion 360. So it has a 1 resource, a 2 resource, a 3 resource, and then it has a -1 shield, a -2 shield, and a
That's
broken
cool.
shield.
That's
I
awesome.
created this dice before I think people started doing a bunch of the big streaming dice that exist there. But this is made with a 3D printer using resin. So obviously after the design, I basically took the file and 3D printed this, and it became a real thing.
Hmm.
And before I wanted to sell these, I actually asked LSS, I said, hey, am I allowed to in small batches, maybe sell these as like a member exclusive to a YouTube or a Patreon backer or something to give back to the community, but not charge arms and legs, but I wanted to get permission to do it. And they responded and they said, yes, you can. But because I went through those channels, I feel more comfortable with this is an approvable, or it's more acceptable than like, here is a carte blanche thing that basically just says, look at my thing. It's a proxy. Like that's a little scary to me that exists.
Yeah, agreed. And I
Um,
mean, with anything, as long as you have like approval from Legend Story Studios and they're aware in email, then I think that you're, being above board. I think for the things that you showed earlier, I don't know if they'd be very happy with that since it's like you're reprinting their, artwork and card art. But with the dice you
so this
made, like
is
that's pretty like generic, so that makes sense. I mean, one thing, dude, I wanted to do something recently. I saw Red Zone Rogue Kel. He made like his own like Flesh and Blood card with the border of the Flesh and Blood card with new artwork in the middle. That looked
Yep,
cool.
I can show you where to get those templates because they are custom cards. So there's a whole fab custom community that exists out there that I've been following for a while, and there's templates out there that people have designed to be able to allow you to do like cool, like if I were a little bit more fancy with my OBS skills, which I'm not. So
Yeah,
Manstan or
same.
Ethan, I'm gonna be bugging you, but I could have theory put our heads if I had the build out. I could have put our images behind like the border for like let's say the pits or whatever, and I could have done stuff like that, which is what originally they're used for. But then also people like Red Zone are using them to create custom characters with custom artwork. And I would, I'll send the link to you so you can do that. But that is like cool stuff because then that's where, man, those people making the custom cards are passionate. Like you can tell they really want a cool hero to do something. And
Well, yeah,
I've
like
seen it.
I've got Patreon or patrons, so it'd be cool to like print like 50 of them from like some card creator, like make playing cards or whatever, and just give them out to patrons. And I'm sure if, Legend Story Studios doesn't mind that. I'm not directly profiting from selling a limited batch of like 1 out of 50 cards like direct to consumer. If I was doing that, I don't think they'd like it. But yeah, I mean, just the promo type card like that seems pretty cool. Like putting your own art and of a Flesh and Blood staple. I think I want to do the card Ponder. I really like that one where the guy's just
That's
like
pretty
thinking.
sweet.
What about you? If you had to make a custom card with your face on it, what would it be?
As dumb as it sounds, I would make one that's some sort of Steam counter because I like
Oh,
mech, and there really isn't a counter for anything mech related at this stage in the game. So there's no card that's for mechs. Now there obviously are, the little aftermarket tokens from like the Fab Metal Token guys, which, I love because they're metal. But from a card perspective, I'd probably make like a mechanologist token of some sort just because I like the class so much.
That'd be cool. Yeah, and I don't think there
What
is anyone.
One last thing is if you look back at the camera, I'll show you this. So back on
Mhm.
the art world, Mark Poole was there. And to circle back on things like you were talking about, this is an artist proof of the new
Oh,
Ranger
nice. You picked
quitter.
one up?
Yeah, and I paid a little extra for this, but I this is my first official doodle, I
Whoa,
guess, or artist sketch. So I've never owned one of these in my life, and
that
I
looks
feel like
sick.
this is pretty cool. So I actually got to interview him, and that is something that hopefully I need to finish editing it, but that'll be one of the other videos that'll come out sooner or later. But that was part of the reason for me trying to grab this box and talk about those because this I'm willing to pay for, but like those, the only reason I bought it is so I can make a YouTube video and basically like condemn like why the hell is this a thing? But in my Discord groups, I have so many people that are like, I don't see a problem with it, and that kind of bugs me. But like
What,
they're not mad
fake
about
cards?
this. Yeah, like and
Yeah.
it's so weird.
Well, I think
People
the
are
thing you
divided
have
in their own opinions.
the thing
Like,
they have to realize is it just creates a really shitty situation for somebody down the line. Either it's a card shop, and when I made my fake and proxy video, I made sure like I got it from a card shop, and literally he was going through his inventory, and he's like, "Oh, this one looks a little different from the rest. What's up with that?" And it's like, well, that's $10 down the drain, and $10 is not that much for like I think I forgot what it was. The channel like Frigid.
imagine if it was all Command and
But
Conquers
yeah,
though.
what if it was Command and Conquers? That's $100 card that a shop probably paid like $60 for. That's $60 out of their wallet. What if they bought a playset? That's $180. That's a lot of money that a store lost. Or same with like a player. Like let's say you buy them and then you try to sell back to a store and they say, "Hey, this is fake." Then you literally have to look at someone's eye, right, at a shop as they like write fake on it and like take your cards basically. So now you're out money, and it's a really shitty feeling. And I mean, the worst case scenario is what I said earlier: is you're in a highly competitive event and you get booted out of it just because you have fake cards, and it might not be your fault. Maybe you didn't know. So it just creates all these shitty situations. And overall, I know that Flesh and Blood isn't the most affordable hobby that one can endeavor into. But I think that what makes it beautiful is there's a lot of opportunities to accumulate wealth through your collection and just being in the game long term. You go to a
Absolutely.
bunch
Yeah.
of these pre-release events, you hit a big cold foil, you sell it for stuff you need, and you build your collection over time. I mean, it doesn't take very much to just like if you win tournaments, then you get like really nice prizes. And I mean, look at Michael Hamilton. Like he basically his his job now is Flesh and Blood. And
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
the beautiful part of the game is like, yes, collectability feels bad, and paying a lot of money for certain cards feels bad at first, but it feels better when you sell out of the game, then you can get your money back. Whereas a lot of other games, you pay a lot of money for competitive decks, then you go to sell and then you lose like 50-60% of what you initially spent on it. So
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
a give and
I
take.
think the long-term market in Flesh and Blood, cards are holding value.
They
That
are.
includes Tunic. It technically includes Skullcap. Even though it dropped, I feel this is a momentary lull in its drop. I actually feel like that card will not go any lower than it is, and it will climb back up because of unless it gets reprinted, the original printings of those cards, again, with the whole reprint policy of LSS and the foiling and then going down the different levels. So you have your cold foil, which I believe would have been Arc First Edition. Then you have the rainbow foil of Arc Unlimited. Then you have the white border version. They're really, oh, I'm sorry, incorrect. There's the Everfest version. But then in History Pack 2, there will probably be a white border version of it. So you now have that trickle down of those cards coming. And I believe that'll be in whatever, or History Pack 2, I think is what it would be in.
I believe so.
Um, so, there's value in the OG copy, cold foil number one, RF number two, so on and so forth. It depends on if you're a collector or a player, but there's going to be different tiers for everybody.
Yeah. And going into that like topic of like card values and what's too much or not, I think that the biggest thing people have to really put out there if they want to talk about the topic is what are your thresholds. Mine is anything under 1,000, you're great. If you're at 1,000 to 1,500, then you're kind of in like the sweet spot area. If you're
Is
over
that per
15,
card?
no, per deck. Sorry.
Oh,
so,
gotcha. I was like,
so
man, you got some deep pockets, buddy. I
yeah,
was gonna
don't you
say.
$1,500 per card? Can't you do that? No, like
uh,
I'm talking about competitive decks, like the total price per deck. If it's around 1,500 or like between 1,000 and 1,500, that's kind of sweet spot. Anything under 1,000, I think LSS is doing a great job. It's great that the cards are competitive deck is in that amount. Anything over 1,500 is when I think you get into kind of the danger zone, and it's like, okay, this is getting a little bit too much, for players to do. But as long as it's around that area, I think it's reasonable. And I mean, that sounds like a lot in this day and age with, the video game market giving games out for free, and so you have to pay for loot boxes and
DLCs.
yeah. But like the initial game is free. It's hard to compete that way. But I don't know. I think it's needed, because cards should have value. So then when people actually want to compete and you win a national tournament, you have 20 investors like throwing money at you, like the
Yeah,
story you sent earlier. I mean,
I
what's your
think there's a
threshold?
reason. You know, it's so hard to say because I don't do the competitive side. However,
Mm,
I look at this like from a different avenue. I feel that there should be, I don't think any legendary in my eyes should be even the rainbow foil or non-foil or white border. I don't see how the hell any of them are less than $50. Period. I don't understand that as a concept because Emperor being $12, Eclipse being $12, Doomsday being like 25. There's a couple others that are pretty low. There is no reason for any legendary in my eyes to be less than 50, and people are probably wanting to crucify me or typing away
I
keyboard
agree.
warriors right now. But the thing is that the statistics and likelihood of you getting that versus the amount of boxes that are being opened versus the number that exist, there are probably an equal number of emperors to what other legendaries in that set, to probably Black Tech Whispers.
Yep.
But Black Tech Whisperer is worth a lot more. It's worth $100 versus 10 or 12 because people aren't playing the Emperor. But the moment the Emperor somehow becomes viable or functional or wins a Blitz tournament, that $10 or $12 thing is going to jump to 30, 40, 50, 70, whatever. It's going to jump up, and the cold flow is going to go even higher. And then obviously the creme de la creme, $1,200 one can probably go 2,000 or whatever. It's all proportional, I think.
Yeah.
And that's only done because Flesh and Blood 2.0 exists. So the RF will obviously be the lowest value of any version, but then the cold foil exists for those that want it, and then the Marvel is obviously the tier up. So I don't know, to answer your question pointedly, I don't know if there's a way I could provide a number, but I do agree with your $1,000 and $1,500 methodology. But I look at it from the different perspective of I'm already going to try to own one of every legendary, and I'm going to buy at the bottom and never sell. Like I'm just
Yeah.
hungry for when is that bottom going to hit so that if I don't own it, I can buy one or two. Like as an example, the PvE world I hope is coming this year. Please LSS. I would love to understand when that's coming. Just tell us all. But Silver Palms. I feel every player should own 4 copies of that card because
It looks
if
cool.
yeah, have you
Is
ever
it
heard of
like
a game
40
called
bucks?
like 25 or 30,
Oh
I think.
wow.
Yeah. You ever heard of a game called True Dungeon?
No.
So I'll give you a little preface on why I feel this is a thing. And there's another number I've come up with, and I'll explain that right in tandem to this. And it all relates back to your dollar amount of the game.
Hmm.
This is weird math I do when I'm trying to go to sleep sometimes. So
I love
I'll
it.
I'll try to condense this into a short version so I don't go crazy here. But True Dungeon is a RPG that is basically Dungeons and Dragons, but it's like a live LARP. But they host it at events like Gen Con every year, and they host it at Gamehole Con and some other ones, and they also do virtual True Dungeons.
Hmm.
But there are these tokens that exist, and do I have my box laying over here? So I recently got involved a little bit more hardcore than I once was, and I'm not the deepest player, but there is a secondary ecological system to this game as well. Now, the sad part is, oh God, these things.
It's like a currency part of the game or
Oh
something?
my God. No, if you look, these are round tokens,
Whoa.
and this box weighs probably 25 pounds, but each of these tokens
Looks insane.
is and I'll go to zoom in on one here, but each of these tokens is basically an item you can use in the game or something like maybe a piece of equipment or legendary. And
Uh-huh.
I see so many parallelisms to this in PvE, I
Oh
can't even
yeah.
begin to explain. But like, let's say I wanted to use, there's a figurine of power that's a slug. I'm trying to find like a weapon or something. So like, here's a grim axe. Well, there's a lot of nuances to this game without like going into all the details because I'm not the best at explaining it. There is basically a group of people that would go in, so up to 10 people, I believe, or eight, and it's a party. So you have like a druid, a warrior, an elf, or whatever, and you're going through this and you're doing these missions, but there's like these logic puzzles you got to figure out, and you're competing, and then you're battling monsters, but you're building a character stat, and your character stats are literally based on the equipment, all this that you own, and basically you're equipping your character. So there are folks that are out there that will say, I want 10 of every thing so I can equip. So you, when you run through this dungeon at the end, you get extra gold or extra whatever. So this is a loot
Mm-hmm.
equipment, and you'll get the max treasure for when you win, and you get these little sealed mystery packs. And again, why I'm so excited is I swear to God, I hope that PvE goes this way, because like loot packs in this, it would just like my mouth would just salivate for days. But
It's just
uh,
such an easy like thing to do. Like loot pack is just a booster pack, right?
Oh yeah, and then like that would have, let's say like, oh, your character, you shuffle them up and you get one loot draw and you get one loot draw. Oh, you have the
Yeah.
extra loot draw. Oh, you get two loot cards, or whatever. And those are like PvE exclusive items that maybe don't affect the hyper competitive guys, but they'll affect like maybe PvE and ultimate pit fight or something. So they're dual use, but they're collectible. But there's like a subset, kind of like if you ever heard of Pokemon, they do these like rainbow collections inside, or trainer collections, or trainer galleries. So it's like a
I've heard of those.
subset within a set, but maybe the TG or the trainer gallery or the PVE gallery is only usable in not in the professional sense, but in the other realm. So
Hmm.
uh, to circle this all back, there's a value currency on these, and like some of these tokens can be thousands of dollars. I think one or two of
Really?
them I was talking to. Oh God, yeah. One of the ones that the guy I know, Gabe, he's a very big dungeons or he's very big into this game, and some of the loot treasure tokens, like I'll have to find some of the links, I'll send it, but they sell for like one of these is like $2,500, and he has 10 of them.
That is
So it's like, if you
nuts.
think about it, that's like what, $25,000 and just
Yeah.
10 little discs of plastic. Okay. I'm like, I want one. And he's like, sure, $2,500. And I'm like, but I don't want to buy that. He's like, well, then you can't have it. But then that's like, they're protected. It's like within the
China
group,
proxies.
everybody, and well, that's the beauty. They actually apparently on the really high end ones put a q like a RFID token on it, so you can like scan to confirm they're actually legit. And you
Whoa.
can even, I've heard rumors that you can, depending on where you win it at, or if you get it or pull it in a loot, you can, once you key it, you can key it to your account, or like you can key it to a name, so when you read it, it says like Jacob's loot of awesomeness or whatever or
That
something,
is
so it
so
has your
cool.
name. Yeah. So, long story short, there's some cool shit that I really wish LSS might be able to do. I don't know if they will. Obviously, it's a whole different world, that world. Um, I diverged very far there, but needless to say, the reason I think having four, back to the silver palms, having four
Hmm.
palms is if you have a max of four groups, I want to be able to walk in and be the guy that says, "Hey, everybody, you're new, you're new, you're new. Great, let's play. Okay, here's your full kit. Here's your full kit. Here's your full kit. Everyone gets max treasure. Everyone gets max whatever. We're gonna go and we're gonna roll this boss. We're gonna have a fun time. We're gonna drink. We're gonna be merry. But at the end of the day, I still get to keep my stuff. And oh, hey, because you all participated, and this is kind of a general thing in the D&D side, or in the true dungeon. Let's say your max loot is 25. Well, he might say, hey, because I gave you the max loot and you would have only gotten 10 before, why not split it with me and you get 80%, but I get 20%. So like maybe I'll get
Yeah.
two pulls for giving you like, or I don't know, like let's say the new player gets two pulls, I might get three pulls or something, but you multiply that across four players. When I got 3, 6, 9, 12 pulls, and they each got 2, 4, 6, 8 pulls. So that's a total of 20 in a pack or whatever. So it's the full dungeon, but now I'm able to give them more that they wouldn't have got, but then I'll also kind of gain the benefit from owning those equipment
Yeah,
to
like renting out
buff
the
our whole
equipment.
party. Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, I wonder how they're going to do it, if they're going to do that or if they just have you start with all this like generic equipment, or you start with no equipment and then like every time you win in an
Level up.
encounter, then you get to open a booster pack, and then from that pack you can get two cards out of it, and each person on your like party gets two cards out of that pack, and then every encounter you get like stronger and stronger. I could see that happening with like, there's all these different like rogue likes, like I forgot which ones there are, but there's a good amount of card ones, and it functions just like that. Like you do a battle, and then you choose 1 out of 3 cards. You do a battle, choose 1 out of 3 cards, rinse and repeat until you get to the final boss, and then you have like this crazy deck. So it could go that way too. And then just like you were saying, like maybe you have like your own like hero like pre-made from like all the stuff you already have in your Flesh and Blood inventory. They could do that too. I mean, what are you thinking though with the characters? Like in my mind, I really just hope they have it to where you can pick your own character and role play as like a different name. I hope they don't have it to where you have to be like one of the prefab Flesh and Blood heroes, like Dorinthia and Reinar.
Honestly, I guess I'm torn on both directions of there, and
Yeah.
that's mostly from I would say I played a bunch of MMOs, but the only ones I've really played were SOTOR, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which was, I guess there was an online version of it. And then I played WoW for like 30 seconds and said nope and hard exited right stage. But I really liked WoW the card game, so it's a very weird parallel there. Um, Me and custom character names, I don't care if I'm Jacob the warrior or if I'm Dorinthia the warrior. Like I don't care personally because I can maybe fill out a character sheet that has my name, and if we're playing, then I'm that character. I could see that maybe being. Have you ever seen those like magic sleeves that go over and kind of do like a custom card? Like it's like a sleeve, it's like an art sleeve, but then it changes the art or whatever, but it goes over a card. I could see maybe a sleeve that goes over that lets you change like maybe some stats, or there's
Oh
other games
yeah.
that you can change stats based on sleeves. So maybe if you're in like level 1, you throw the level 1 sleeve over top of the card, and your character stats get modified to like maybe your health and your hand size are reduced because those numbers are like, let's say 15 and 3. But then when you go to level 2, you pull your sleeve off, put the level 2 sleeve on, and now you have 17 and 4. But then level 3 is like 20 and 5 or whatever. So it could change your health and intellect. Again, this is mixing other games terminologies, but that's kind of where this weirdness has come in, is because LSS is, I don't want to say drag their feet. I appreciate that they're taking their time to do it right, but other folks have come up with custom um, content in the community, and my expectations are now skewed
Yeah.
because I have seen things and I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. So when I don't see it in the official product, if it doesn't make it there, I'm going to be like, well, God damn it, they could have done it this way. And I really liked that. So I'm going to be more affinity toward like, maybe I like that, but I'm still going to support the official one regardless of what it is, because I think I'm going to enjoy it. And I feel like they've really, I don't think they have to hit it out of the park, but they just have to not pull a magic 30. Like,
They
as long
just
as it's not,
they need a couple big groups of, I think, YouTubers who are playing campaigns and make active content. I think that if they
I will
partner
do
up
that
with
with
people,
you. If
that
you
would
want to
be.
do that, or if we can get
I don't
like,
know if I have
I'm
the time.
assuming,
I wish I did, man. If
I
if
will
I
gladly
do,
find a group.
if I do when it comes out, I'll hit you up. But man, I just don't. And that's the problem with a lot of people who want to actually play that content is like I used to be in a D&D group, and you had to be there every Tuesday. You couldn't
It's
miss a
a
day,
very religious
and it's
thing. Yeah,
like
you gotta be.
5 fucking hours of playing, and it was a lot of fun. I had lot of fun, but it was a big time commitment, every week.
That's why I haven't been able to get into. I talked about the board games between me and my friends. Two games that we haven't started that I really want to is Gloomhaven. I
Hmm.
have it. I have multiple. Between us, we have multiple. But that's such a time sink. I can't get into that one. And then there's another one called Madara, which is like a JRPG style. Big game that takes a while to set up. It's
Hmm.
fun, but it's very campaigny and very long. And I have cats, and they like to yeet things off tables. So I have no real way to like set it up long term without causing, the inevitable cat on the floor, which then the dog will eat the thing. So,
Yeah.
eh, but yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of options, and I think you're right. I think that there's going to need to be a dedicated group playing it, and I think that there's
Like Critical
a
Role
hunger.
or any of those like big groups that like can just get a bunch of people in to watching the content and seeing like how to do it, because PvE isn't very like from the Dungeons and Dragons world. It takes a little bit to get acclimated to it, and the dungeon master is extremely important individual who really coordinates everything and acts stuff out, and it's
100%.
it's not easy. Like when if you put 4 random nerds in a room who've never like played D&D and given them a book and say go, they're it's gonna look
Monkey
like
humping
sloppy.
doorknobs. It's gonna be
Exactly.
bad.
But if they
I,
watch
and I,
YouTube videos and see Matthew Mercer like doing all of this shit and everyone acting his stuff out, then they have like a concept of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm drinking my beer and hanging out with my friends.
Yeah, and I will say that that is the number one downfall back to that true dungeon thing I was talking about is there is a lot of nuances to that because I'm not a true D&D'er. Like I want to be, but similar to you, I have time restraints, and
Yeah.
I kind of had to say that can't be something I can do. And I would love to do some stuff in those veins, but the dedication to setup and management and character creation and lore and world and all that stuff, as you're aware, even like in the content creator side of this, trying to get your thoughts together, at least for me, and trying to make a structured video. Like the camera I'm looking at here is it's a teleprompter. I don't know if you've ever seen one, but I had to buy a teleprompter because
Oh, that's awesome.
I am horrible at just like these kind of conversations I'm okay with. But like if you wanted me to like structure video for somebody to like conversate about, I need to start trying to write a script, and then I if I look at the script and try to say it, I'm gonna fuck it up. So then I it's like, okay, I'm gonna get a little thing, and I'm gonna put a monitor, and I'm gonna write the script, and then it's gonna scroll past, and then I have a little device that lets me, scroll back and forward, so I'm cussing at it and saying I said it wrong or whatever. So my content I'm trying to do is very much trying to be educational in that regard, but then I would love to do the stuff that you're able to do, which is like, just roll with it and just kind of throw stuff out there, which is, really what I've seen you do is my brain just can't handle that. Like I'm squirrel. I'm
Oh,
way
what do you
off on the
mean?
other
Like just
side.
like the topics I go off on?
Yeah, like your videos, I don't know if they're scripted or not, but they're very
No.
much I can take that as a 20-minute or 10-minute conversation and be very into that and understand where your brain is going and kind of listen to it, even as a podcast style of thing, where if you're not watching the video. But for me to try to talk to this camera in a room by myself for 20 minutes, I would just squirrel off into six different directions and never circle and finish my
Yeah,
conversation.
sometimes I have these sheets like of like different like talking points and I like think about what I want to say during the day, but other than that it's like I just like go. And I will say like a lot of times like I'll start up a video, I'll get like a minute and a half in and I like make some screw ups and I just start it over. I usually have to do that about 10 times per video. People probably don't know that about me, but yeah, no, I mean I start out a video and maybe I like cough or something, and I just restart it. But then usually when I can get in that groove, it's like this kind of like nice groove of like just where words are coming out and where I can say things, then
Yeah.
it's usually good. But it took me a long ass time to do that. Like, and I was talking to Sloop Dupe, a couple weeks ago, and he was saying the same thing. Like when you first start making videos and you're talking, it's tough to just stay on it. I mean, there's some people who are just naturally talented, I feel though. Like I met Paul the Tall Timmy in person. He is his character in real life. Like he does have that much energy and exuberance in his life. And I was like, holy, when I met him in person, I was like, shit, man, like that's cool to see. Cause like if you meet me at Worlds or something, I'm gonna be like the most boring ass dude, and you might think like, oh, well, is he having an off day here or whatever? No, that's how I'm usually just quiet and chill. But when you make video content, you can't just be like, hello, I am Bronson. I do things like you have to put like energy into it, or else it's not entertaining, you know. So
Oh, you
thanks.
totally. If in the next video you do, I totally please do it in a completely monotone voice. I would love to see a video that's like, hello.
Hello,
Yeah.
I am here. Please watch video. Like, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, and there's a whole dynamic too. Do you ever feel that like where you want to be authentic to your true self, but then you also have to be your entertaining self, and you have to like dial that shit like in a perfect sweet spot, because you can't be like too like monotonous, or like that's not entertaining, but then you can't like go like wacky like random shit and then you're a cartoon character. You ever feel like that?
100%. And
Yeah.
I will there will times that I'm trying to read something, especially when I've gotten used to this teleprompter a little bit, where I'm like, trying to tongue tie something, or if you watch close enough, you can basically tell when I'm reading from the teleprompter when I'm trying to wing something from my head.
Hmm.
Because like if I'm reading and I screw it up, I'll be like blah, 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 blah. It's like I can't, and then I'll have to stop, rewind, and then I'll like, okay, cut here, and I'll put that stuff as bloopers at the end of my video because it's funny, and I'll say something completely stupid But at the same time, you're right. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be precise, but sometimes the message that you want to convey or the tonality it doesn't match, or maybe you want it to be super serious. Like I want to be super serious about no procs or no counterfeit cards, but then at the same time, if you don't make it funny and entertaining, no one's really going to want to watch that. Like
Yeah.
it's this weird balance, like right, like
Or
it's
informative. Like I think the a lot of the videos that you're making recently just informing like the people and doing these interviews, man. Like I think that's a cool, you don't really see that many videos where someone's just holding up a mic to somebody's face and like asking them and interviewing them. I feel like there's not too much of that, is there? Like
no
I think it's cool.
my time to talk is in my videos. And when I if like and I'll hold myself to this, when I go to Baltimore, as long as I don't get told no, I am building this whole interview rig to come and do the exact same thing. I got, a couple folks that I did it in Indianapolis, but I would love to get interviews with other artists, other content creators, LSS staff, LSS dev, and I may not be the right person to be the interviewer on some of those folks because I don't know. I can ask very generic
I
questions, but
think
I'm
you
not going to know
are.
like
I think you're the
really.
guy. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I was gonna
You
say
have this like vibe to you that it screams interview. Honestly, like when I saw those, I was like, oh yeah, this is a great fit for this guy. Like it's just you look really legit.
the funny thing is I work for there's a event here in Indianapolis called PopCon, and it's basically a pop culture convention. And one of the things that I've done for them for years is I basically do the interviewing, but I typically have a
Oh,
team of folks with me. Um, so I'm not the one doing the interview. I'm the technical on the backside. Like here's the camera, here's the rig, here's your mics, here's your lobs, here's your things, and I'll be like, okay, camera one, two, three, go. Talent, all right, let's go, and we'll ask the question. So I'm very used to the interview style, but I'm
mhm.
not normally the one on the other side holding the mic, being like, "I'm here with Bronson from Flesh and Blood's awesome YouTube channel of awesomeness. How do you feel today, Bronson? Here you go." And, so like that's the kind of stuff that I need to get better at the on-cam other side of it. That's
Do you ever
not
watch
me in a room.
do you watch Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan?
No,
It's really
I'll
cool,
have to
man.
go find that.
He made this he basically just interviews like crazy people. But anyway, long story short, I feel like when he interviews, he just always has a question on hand to ask them. Like he'll just like try to ask good questions to where the person will just like go on and talk, about a certain situation or something. And if they pause, then he'll just like say, here's follow-up question, and then, keep getting more verbiage out of them. But
Exactly. You
but
got to have
basically
a
he just
couple of
stares
follow-ups.
there and he just like lets them talk and say what they need to say. It's
Yeah,
cool.
and that's the best content in my eyes because my whole point of interviewing somebody is not for me to be in the spotlight. My point
Yep.
of interviewing that person is to shed light on what that person is doing either for the community, for themselves, or in relation to why they're doing the thing that they're doing. Look at the MinMax interview. I learned some stuff. I didn't even know the guy beforehand at all, and it's like the interesting facts of like things that I learned. It's or even Himal Patel. He kind of alluded to some stuff, and it's changed some of my perspective of how I look at some of the aspects of how the community consumes certain content or certain things. So it's very interesting.
It really is, and I think you touched on a good point. There's a lot of different types of people out there in the trading card game industry. I mean, you have the shop owners, the players, collectors, and everyone has like their different like angle. And Joey from Decks and Drafts is a great example of someone who just thinks on like a different level, and he's a part of Genesis Battle of Champions, so he has that insider kind of like information of different stuff that goes on around inside a trading card game company. So you have these different people who have different viewpoints, and when you listen to all of them, you get just a really interesting like symphony of different opinions.
Speaking of which, if you look at the camera again,
Yeah,
so I'm working on some videos. I want to do a how to play video for that. I want to do a how to play video for Flesh and Blood. I know there are some out there, but I
do
think
it.
more or merrier. I can't wait to do one for Lorcana once more of that comes out. I just I like content that's more educational. I feel like that's been my role is I like to teach people things. And if I can pass any wisdom on to anybody, like that's my primary goal in life is I can't know it all, but if I can pass on some sliver that I know will live on in somebody else, that's my inner. inner goal.
That's so cool to hear, man. Well, the great part of that is it's just evergreen content. Like it'll be good for years on end. For like learning how to play Flesh and Blood or Lorcana or whatever game, Genesis. Like, that type of content where it's informational based. A lot of people type questions in YouTube, trying to get answers. But
Very much,
yeah,
yeah. It's like those funny skits, the what is a Comedy Central, or maybe it was Funny Video. They like do the "What did you ask Google?" and it's like the parody of like all the crap that Google gets in its
oh yeah,
search results.
yeah. It's crazy. Like and then that stuff gets a lot of views, and especially on YouTube. I actually had a question earlier. Out of all the cards, collectability and card value for players is an issue, right? Where some cards that are staples could become too pricey, and then they price people out to playing the cards, the game pieces that they need to play, Flesh and Blood. What do you think about the Heart of Fyendel? So recently it spiked, and it's around like $400 now, I believe, maybe 350. But what happens when that card gets 500, 600, $700, possibly, like hypothetically? Like, do you think they're going to reprint the card, or do you think they're just going to let it ride?
Well, I'm gonna be both a butthead, but I'm also gonna be
Because they didn't print it
an
in History
advocate of the
Pack.
player.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you out. They didn't print it in History Pack 1, which was very weird. So,
No, they didn't, and I think they did it on a very specific purpose of not printing it, actually.
hmm.
Um, so I actually asked that question to Himel Patel in a separate and kind of a similar vein, and I feel like the answer is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario for Flesh and Blood. So I don't have to personally worry because I have one myself. As in, I opened one at the Farewell to Welcome to Wraith event,
That's a
in
good
my
farewell.
packs. So during my draft, I got one. Now I've actually owned three at once, and you're gonna be like, "Wow, that's probably not common." And that was because I had bought four random packs, one of each artwork from my LGS, and I opened them, and it was in the random pack. So that I actually traded to my friend Tim up in Wisconsin for a library. I'm sorry, no, it was a, what was the other Fabled? It was the Tales of Aria one.
The
Tree
tree,
Corsham.
Corsham. Yeah.
So obviously you can see as value has gone up, who got the better deal there. Technically, he did because the heart is more valuable. However, I will go out on a limb and argue that I got the better deal, even though I lost money. And here's why: because now I have a Fabled that I did not have. So because I now have that, the value to me on these fables is kind of an irrelevant function. It's really more so, is it being played in a meta relevant deck, and does that indicate to somebody specific that that is a requirement to actually play at a professional level? Because at a casual level, I don't think Fableds should be even considered at the table. So like the new not the Fable, there's well the legendary, the or whatever. So when you look at the CNC reprint, it's a good example. That
Hmm.
Fabled doesn't mean a damn thing to me, or probably to most people, because it doesn't help get the card into a user hand. But when you go back and look at specifically at like Heart of Fyendel, that is a generic resource gem.
Hmm.
Anybody can use it in any deck. Eye of Ophidia, I believe, is a generic resource gem as well. Anybody, any deck can use it. Those two cards, I believe, will become a super problem if not figured a way to reprint. And I don't know how the heck that's going to happen. I don't know if a non-foil white border will exist in some part down the road, but I'm sure that there's also the catch to where if they were to release something, I don't remember who it was, maybe it was Unhinged Magi or somebody, he had like a fat stack of these things where he bought,
Yeah.
200 to 300 of them. Okay,
What info does he know?
cool. So he bought two or 300 of them at some point, and you're going to piss that one whale off by reprinting put it in a starter deck. Now, I doubt they'd ever do that, right? But the value proposition of that card, there needs to be a echelon tier of value, like we said, with cold foils and rainbow foils and non-foils, so that players can have their access and others can't. But at $400 and that card going up, I mean, when you look at the historical pricing, and that's again back to why I want to try to do this database thing, is, I mean, I don't ever remember seeing Heart of Findale less than I don't know, maybe $250. I honestly don't remember it ever being lower than that.
It
So
was
for it to
like
be full,
it's like 150, 200 for a time. I was so
really? Okay.
lucky at once. I think I got one for 150. I owned 5, by the way. I just want to make that public and transparent.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. So like, I mean, even at $150, that is more than the value of a single box. So
Yep.
everything circles around the value of what's in this content.
But do you think they'll
And
reprint it? Like that's
I hope they do.
you hope they do?
Regardless of how many I would own, how many regardless, I think I had three. I now own two. Both of mine are graded and they're both 9.5s,
Hmm.
which is apparently astonishing to get. I had no idea. So like that was amazing.
That's big.
But like the other one I had, it got graded, and again I traded it to my buddy. But the problem is I don't think there's a solution to the problem unless they make it accessible, because you're always going to have those decks that are like, well, that extra one resource or that extra one, thing made that meta deck win because it's in there, right? Or people are
Yeah.
always going to want to run it because Michael Hamilton's running it. Well, he obviously is a pro player that made $100,000 from the Worlds tournament, so he's going to be able to just go cha-ching, here you go, if he didn't already have it, right? Like that's just part of the meta. It's
Yeah.
part of his deck. But for Bob, the Lumbergs, who has the red stapler and says, I want my, heart. Well, okay, maybe they print a lesser gem, the gem of, instead of the heart of Findale, maybe it's the spleen of Findale. I don't know. And
Oh,
it's,
kind of like a lotus petal. Like
yes, like I think that that's going to be the direction they're going to have to go. Is
yeah.
if you look at Magic, some of the most valued cards, the Moxen and the Lotus, there were other variations of those that came out that were like artifacts that were not necessarily tier 0, which is probably, I'm going to call that like the S tier or whatever, but they were tier 1 or tier 1.5 or tier 2. So they
Yeah.
do the same thing, but they don't give the bang for buck. Similar to right
So
now,
what you're
people are
saying
saying
is
that
like
there's,
the spleen of Fandel.
yeah, the spleen, the lung of
The lung
Fandel,
of
the the right the right earlobe. I have no idea.
Well,
That's
I
so
mean,
horrible.
that's a really good point. I didn't think about like a lesser I don't know how you could do it a lesser. Maybe you'd have it like a yellow pitch and like gaining one. But I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Because
let's take a look at Heart. So I don't reference Heart very often because I don't ever really play it. But
yeah.
so it's legendary. You can only have one in the deck. So I'm assuming it still need to be legendary. And it says when you pitch it, if you have less life than the opposing hero, gain a life. So maybe that effect is not as good. Maybe, yeah, like you said, maybe they go a yellow pitch, but then instead of, well, I mean, it'd have to be legendary because otherwise there'd be no point, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
you just run a shit ton of them. So, like I said, that's where it gets into this weird design territory. Is how does it not get abused? Because the fact that it is generic means that until they ban this card, and based on recent comments and posts, I don't foresee them getting to the stage where they're gonna, start actively banning, cards from legendaries or up. I don't see them wanting to do that. If
Yeah.
they ban a Fabled, people are going to lose their shit more so than a legendary.
Oh, of course. And it's just one of the biggest topics I think of contention over like reprints because
But it's not talked about very often.
it isn't. And I was talking to Sloop Dupe about it a couple weeks and we were going back and forth and I think in the comments section somebody did note in the foreign black border history packs they did reprint the heart. So they did reprint it once more, but that was only for the black border like, boxes. But like once those are dried up, it's like you've already printed History Pack 1 without the Fable. I think History Pack 2 has Fables in it. So
It does.
they did show that they are willing to reprint the Fables in the History Pack, but they didn't reprint the ones in like the Heart of Fandale and the Eye of Ophidia, which was really crazy. So it just begs the question, what fucking product are you going to reprint it in? And maybe the answer is they're not. And if that is
I
a
also
true
don't own an
case,
eye, which is the other scary thing right now because I was
yeah,
going to buy
because
one
of
at Calling
Kano.
Indy.
Yeah,
Well, I wanted to buy one. Now, you want to see my eye? This is
yeah.
this is how I roll right now. This is my eye. Hold on. I got it to the side because until I own one, the closest I'm going to get is this. It's a piece of printer paper cut out and put on
Oh,
a Ride the Tailwinds. And I used to do this in Magic back in the day because this is the only card in this Kano deck that I don't actually own a copy of. But like in order for me to
and it's
try and
so good for
play,
Kano. Op 2 is just ridiculous.
it's yeah, and honest to God, I in my mech deck, I
Hmm.
actually want this because I want to opt with my Voltron. So
Yep.
I think there are going to be scenarios. Oh, sorry, that's another topic right there, by the way. Those are the barcode cards. You know about those?
Oh yeah, they were big back in the day.
So there's two. There's one that's a blank back and a barcode, and then there's this one that has the barcode with the official Flesh and Blood back.
Oh, I haven't seen that one, I
So
think.
yeah, this is pretty damn rare. I've only seen three of this one.
Oh wow,
I've
that's
seen
crazy.
like five of this one, and I'm talking personally, like in the wild kind of a thing. I think I've seen a couple on eBay, but those are, you know, those in my eyes are basically as valuable as those the resources. But to a player, obviously, they mean nothing, right? They don't do the function that the card is. Um,
Yeah, it's
but
just
yeah,
hard because you don't know how many are out there. You don't know so many. Cardamonde had like a fat stack of them because I think there's one per print sheet, right? Or one per two print sheets. There's a good amount.
Well, I can tell you that the one that has the blank barcode came from a Blitz deck because the guy I got it from, I asked exactly how he got it, and he
Oh
gave me all
wow.
the details of exactly which Blitz deck he bought and how it came out of the pack. It was in a token slot, so I know a lot more about that than other stuff. But that's one of my favorites. Is I'm a misprint guy. I like crimps. I like weird stuff. Like that's out of my old Magic collection. That's some of the stuff I never sold was my misprints.
Yeah,
Um,
misprints are really cool. I got one of those too, $50. Like it was like a long time ago when the market lulled for them, but it's a really cool card.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but to answer your question back on the gems,
Hmm.
I don't see in those it's those two specific cards that are the problem because if they're
Yes.
going to reprint the ones going forward in History Pack 2, the only thing I can think of is they're going to need to collate that into another fabled slot in a later supplementary set where it's going to be another fabled and supplementary, but it's going to be a non-foil fable. I think that's the only option they can go for.
Yeah.
And at that point, I feel that that's an acceptable solution. Um, but they've already proven that they can put any card upshifted into any or downshifted theoretically, right? Like, I don't they've upshifted super rares to majestics in History Pack 1.
Hmm.
They've upshifted majestic into a fabled using Command and Conquer, but they have not that I'm aware of downshifted a rarity of a card that I
Not that
know
I
of.
know of, and I don't think they do it from the heart. Like that would be
That would be unreal. But
nuts.
I will tell you this, there are, and I can talk to you about these at another point in time because I know we're at probably 3 hours here, and I think it's getting close to when you need to jump off too because it's getting to be long in the tooth. I
Oh
think
yeah, it's
so.
been a great chat though, man.
Oh, it has, but I will end with this.
Yeah.
There are certain cards, if you start to research, that they
Mhm.
omitted from History Pack 1. There will be certain cards that I guarantee, I'll use the G word again, guarantee will not be in History Pack 2 because they can't fit it all based on the numbers that they have provided on the sheet.
Yep.
The number of those sets combined, there are going to be missing cards. Those cards that are missing from History Pack 1 and History Pack 2, over time, the original copies, 'cause that's all that exist, are going to slowly increase. And if one of them becomes meta or staple, that's going to be a huge spike on all those cards because they didn't get reprinted. Meaning that unless they shove them into supplemental sets or somewhere else, it's going to have the same effect as a heart. It's going to have the same effect as an eye if they become meta playable.
Yeah,
So
but like those cards, those single cards can go probably like, $10, $20, but the harder the eye, I mean, they're getting close to like, if they keep creeping up and like they've been a big investor collector, like, spec for a while and they dry up, it's gonna be pretty crazy if you have a game piece that's worth like $800 and if
I
you
think
want it.
we've passed the dry up phase. I really do think that they already are considered dried up. I
Yeah.
I do not foresee, and I don't know how many people are I know you got I see in your background all the time the boxes that you have. So I don't know if like, you got one of each set or however that works, but like
Oh, yeah.
holistically,
Some are like, I think this one's empty, but like some of them are like Monarch and just random ones. Arcane Rising, Welcome to Wrath Unlimited. I just various different sets.
because that's going to be another big component is how much, like let's say they come out tomorrow and they give the print run numbers for the entirety of, let's say, WTR Unlimited and Arcane Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to start monkey mathing immediately, right? And then you're going
Uh,
to have the big brain people say, "Oh, there's only X amount of
1 out of
fabled,"
5,000 heart
and
eBay.
they're gonna basically just yank that to the moon using that as an excuse, right?
Yeah,
But if it's already at some absurd number, but then they come out and say, "Oh, there really was," I don't know. I if I had to give you, I mean, do you want me to give you my? Or do you want to play the let's end with the let's guess how much the print run might be, or is that a no no? That
I'm
I heard that
down.
got people. I heard that got people in trouble in some
Non
other earlier
investment,
scenarios.
non investment
Not
advice, of
investment
course.
advice.
Yeah, and
Um,
we've no scoopies on this.
No, this is complete speculation in my eyes. But if you think about the player influx and the fact that they did a farewell event, right? They knew
Mhm.
that was coming. Like somebody in a marketing department said, "We're going to do a farewell. We want to bring stores in. We want to promote the product. We need something to exist." This is probably right at the tail end of them saying we're going first in unlimited, right? Like that's my thought.
Mhm.
So if Monarch was printed big because Monarch was like, hey, we're going to, we have this big influx, but then the data was wrong, and that was 125,000 for the unlimited, or no, first, right?
Mhm.
125,000 for the first. Unlimited has to be higher. I would imagine there would be no scenario in my mind where that unlimited number would be lower. So if you look at WTR, I would imagine there is a minimum of 125,000 because they obviously had to do probably an equal number, I would see at least of what a first edition run would be for unlimited or for Monarch.
Mhm.
That's my thought. Is there's no less than 125,000. That's my thought
Like total boxes.
for unlimited. I would say, oh dear God, sorry, I just pulled up uh the lowest Heart of Findel is now $500 on TCG Player
That's what I'm talking about, and
as of right now,
that's now.
and there are only 10 listings. That is
Yeah.
it. There are 10 listings for that.
Well, because like what I was talking about before, Jacob, is like my scale is like 1,000 to 1,500. When one card is $1,000, it's like for an entire and you need it for a deck. It's pretty
Be sitting on gold or somebody's crazy. This is a PCG 9, which I have the 9.5s. They want $900 for the 9.0 non-9.5. And
stonks.
it looks like the Heart of Findel Rainbow Foil Unlimited. That's bullshit. There's no way. Somebody says they're 9.5. Kenny GMTG wants it for $5,900 for a 9.5 heart.
Oh, that's
Maybe it
pie in the sky.
maybe it really is worth that. I have absolutely no idea how hard it is to get a 9.5. That's going to have to be a Saint question.
Yeah.
Like maybe it truly is really hard to get those in maybe I don't know. But even if you took what was it? So 100 and I did some napkin math at one point, but 125,000 boxes times 24 packs is 3 million packs. And I'm just talking, let's just talk Monarch because that was officially announced, right? So that means there's 3 million first edition Monarch packs
Hmm.
based on 125,000 boxes. Now, if you multiply that out and you say that it's one in every 40 or no, was it 125,000 packs or was it 125,000 boxes?
It's like
Do you remember?
what do you mean? Sorry.
When they released that date, I don't know if it was easy to look up, but I don't remember if it was 125,000 packs or if it was 125,000 cases. It might have been 125,000 packs.
I think
I think
125,000 boxes.
it was boxes is what they said,
Yeah.
because that'll dictate my next math decision. Because I'm doing this napkin math on the fly here versus trying to calculate it out.
Yeah. Let me see real quick. And I think the heart you could probably put like 1 out of 32 or something.
As in, out of 32 boxes, you think it's one out of every 32 instead of one out of 40?
I think so. I've heard different rumblings. Yeah, 125,000 boxes of Monarch.
So,
Honestly,
so that's 3 million packs.
with
But
that
if you take, go ahead.
with that number, I think the total number of Welcome to Wrath, non-investment advice, was probably 250,000 or 200. I'd see that. I think they originally printed in Belgium probably like 100-ish, and then they printed Japan another 100-ish. Like they just doubled the print size because
Are
of
you seeing my smile, by the way?
no.
Okay. So you hit the topic right there that I didn't think anybody I wasn't going to mention it, but you are right. There are two print runs for WTR. You have the Belgium
Yep.
first, which has Drone of Brutalities that were removed. As in, Drone of Brutalities are in that one. The second Japan one, Drone of Brutalities were removed. I don't know if you know that or not, but the second Japan ones, you cannot hit Drone of Brutalities in.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you have a WTR stop tape that's red, you cannot hit a Drone of Brutality in a Japanese pack of WTR.
Hmm.
If you have a Belgium print run WTR, you can hit Drone of Brutalities. Drone of Brutalities are only available in the Belgium WTR boxes. I am only aware at this point of very, very, very few sealed Belgium WTR boxes left sealed because nobody wanted to collect it until people realized it was out of print. And most people rip those open. So there are two, if you're a connoisseur or collector, there is a Belgium WTR box that is a different physical footprint size than the Japanese WTR box, which is a little
Yep.
bit larger footprint size. And both of those had different print runs based on when you look at the boxes. If you're familiar with the outer boxes, there's like T numbers and stuff on it. I think that they had different run numbers. So you're probably right. There might be, let's say, 100,000 of a Belgium, but there may be 125 of the unlimited, or maybe 150. So together, maybe there might be 200,000 or so boxes. Now, if you go with that old mentality of what, the 40, or even, we'll
Yeah.
just round it
What?
to the 40 because that's the worst case scenario, right? 1 in 40, isn't that what they say? One per question marks, but people kind of average it to be 1 in 40.
Yeah. Let me do the 32 and see what I come with. So
So 125,000 divided by 32 is about 3,900.
I did 200,000 divided by 32, and that's 6,250.
So if you think about it, if there's 6,250 of that card, theoretically,
Mm-hmm.
non-confirmed, just speculation, and somebody owns, what's 1% of that? You like the 1%er, so like what's 1%?
100
That means
per
if you own 62.
600 and fit. It's 625. You'd have to. Oh no, that's 10%. So 62.
Yeah,
You're right.
1% is 62.5. So if you own 63 hearts, you'd own 1% of the population of hearts if there were 62. Now, if you take that number and let's say you were to have that, like we said, like let's say there was 125, that's down to 30, right? So if you own
Yeah.
30 hearts, you would now have 1%. And obviously, I saw the one guy had a whole fat stack, but I also think that there's a lack of availability on market, and I don't want to say manipulation, but I think that there are people just holding them, waiting for their money to 5x, and then they'll release it. But they probably bought 50 or 10 or 20 or whatever they could afford at the 150, $200 range, right?
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically, if I bought four at the $200 range and I spent $800, and then they go to $400 and I sell two of them, I still have two.
Yeah.
Those are free. Like I've literally paid for those two free by selling just the other two.
Well, when people look at it and they're like, "Oh, this is the Black Lotus of the game. This is the Charizard. I'll buy it," and
Exactly.
they know that no matter what happens in the game, like that's kind of like the pinnacle of the collectible of the game, and that's where I think you have this issue. Whereas there's a lot of other game pieces in Flesh and Blood where you have like you were talking about different equipment pieces where you have like the cold foil variant is like $120 or $100, and then the rainbow foil version is 60. Great, collector piece, player piece. But when you have like the heart, or it's like a $500 player piece, it's just kind of like an odd thing. And I'm sure, of course, I'm not trying to make this into like the biggest question and worry
It's a
for Flesh and Blood,
philosophical question.
but
It really
it
boils
really
down to
is a
almost like a
philosophical question.
philosophical debate with yourself and the community. It's like, how do you fix it?
Yeah.
Because the people that are probably your biggest investors or collectors, or even, like yourself or me, I have two that I have spent time. Oh, I had three, but I have two that I've now graded. And to me, I don't plan on getting rid of them. That's not my goal. Like I
Yeah.
wanted to have them and I want them to be nice and I have memories tied to them. But if I had five or 10 or 20 in theory, I don't know what I would do if all of a sudden they halved in value, right? Like that's like a dual land in Magic, and that scares me to think that. But at the same time, those people are also maybe not the ones that they're trying to grow, because for every one of those people, there's probably 100 kitchen table guys out there that are trying to play the game. But then also, if the game goes tits up, which I hope it never does, but like those are the cards people are going to want. And my 500,000 flesh and blood cards that are strewn throughout wherever I have them, are going to be either fire kindling, or I'm going to have to start finding very clever ways to be like, hey, have you heard of flesh and blood? Here's a 6,000 count box for $2, because that's what, no one's going to want it. But it's not there yet, right? And no one has a crystal ball. No one's going to see it, but that one card, this one valuable item, takes up so much less space and is probably, honest to God, worth damn near the amount of every common bulk card I own. This one,
Yeah.
that's the scale. It's crazy. So
It's crazy to think, like, it's the same type of materials used for one card versus another, but because of scarcity and, power level and whatever, one card is worth more
have,
than another. It's like it's the founding principles of collectability and trading cards. It's just kind of interesting.
I'm gonna not dox myself is my point here, but this is an example of one.
Yeah. You got some big bulk there.
Two. This is just within arm's reach. Three.
You really
Hold on.
stocking up for the apocalypse there, buddy?
I can't do it. Oh God. These things weigh 30 to 35 pounds a piece.
Jeez.
Just as an FYI. I probably have 25 or 30 of these.
Really? Of those boxes?
Yes, and
How mu
that's the unsorted.
Wow. I think I
Um,
only have like 10.
but the thing with that is, similar to Saints long game, I'm I'm long game in this. I am sorting, I am cataloging. I mean, I am using technology to aid and abet my sorting technologies. So I am getting it to where I can make sets and player sets and class sets and card sets and common sets and different things like that, so that one day when Uprising is not the latest and greatest thing and somebody wants all the Dromai cards, I could be like, hold on, here you go, here's your stack of Dromai cards, here's your stack of Phi cards, here's your Draconic cards for if we have a new Draconic something, right? Like, there we go. So that's my thought.
Nice, man. Yeah, no, I think that that's a really great mentality that's not really talked about as much with people buying cards, and it's like just plan for the long game, Like the honestly, that play with Majestics you did, I'm in the
Mhm.
same boat. Like 20 cents a Majestic is too cheap. Like I don't care what Majestic it is. Like there's
And
in the next
last
5 or 10 years, it's gonna have some purpose and it's gonna go up in price. And just thinking about the monetary like wealth accumulation, right? Like if you're buying Majestics for $1 and you spend $4,000 on $1 Majestics, and that $1 Majestic goes to $20, then you've just made like $80,000 if you bought 4,000 of them. So the margins in those type of plays is just ridiculous. Now you have to worry about shipping costs as well, which is a hindrance to low dollar, high margin cards. But like, it's just you're just playing the long game. It's inevitably going to be useful over time, and then when it does become useful, if it goes to $10-20 a card, I mean that's pretty profitable. It's pretty crazy.
and I'll circle right back onto I almost look at the cards, I don't want to say penny stocks because that's the wrong mentality to look at, but
Yeah.
I would rather own 1 million single cards and be like, cool, the game 30 years from now doesn't exist, but I have 1 million of things that I can make cool things with other people. I can make artwork, I could make tables, I could admire the artwork, I could do whatever the hell I want because I have 1 million of the things, versus I
Yeah.
have one thing, and that one thing has lost all relevancy. But at least if I had a big box like this, I could be like, hey man, you want to get into the game, here, just take this whole big box. It's kind of like a board game now, you can just do whatever you want. That is the worst case scenario I could ever see happening. Like, that is basically like what happened with Star Wars Decipher card game, and I have an almost equal amount of that card game as I do to Flesh and Blood, like, to give you an idea of,
Oh
like,
wow.
I probably have an equal I have a little bit less equal amount of Magic, Pokemon. I have not as much Yu-Gi-Oh, but I would say between Star Wars CCG, Magic, Pokemon, and Flesh and Blood, I probably have. Yeah, I would venture to say it's at least 1 million
I mean,
cards.
the best thing is that they're privately held, and James White is like, he owns a majority
Yes,
share of.
exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing they have going for them. If people are listening this far into the podcast and still not believing in Flesh and Blood, but like I think the biggest two before Flesh and Blood in the last 7 years is you had Star Wars Destiny that failed because
Yep.
of IP issues, and they didn't want to renew, and they probably charged them like way too much just to
It's like
bang.
trying to find a building to make a store in. Like, I
Yep,
have been looking at commercial real estate and the ridiculous amount of money they charge for storefronts. It's like the IP for, Marvel, Star Wars, any of that. They're just like, oh, it's Star Wars. That's 25 times what it would normally be if it was, Bob's Emporium of Magikarps or whatever. I don't
exactly.
know. It's
Oh, and then the other game is Netrunner. I haven't talked about that, but that was a really great game. Same issue. It was Fantasy Flight Games, and they had this licensing agreement that expired, and then they're screwed. And WotC owns the rights to it. So I think that those were the most notable ones that had good IP, of course, but then like the actual gameplay was really good. I think that a lot of other games have really good IP, but maybe the gameplay wasn't that great, and that's why those fizzled out. But I think with Flesh and Blood, it's just got everything going for it.
Yeah, and I mean, they have a system where, and I don't know if anybody else has mentioned this, but I will. This is my final topic because I don't want to necessarily keep you here all
Nah,
night,
you're
and I
good, man.
apologize for dragging this out. But
No, no, I've been loving the
the
conversation, man.
system, the functional system, if done right, which I think that this whole every card has a meaning, every card has a value.
Yep,
There are no dead hands. Every game is unique. Every game has, a brawl feel where I never walk into any game and have been like, oh, I'm just insta dead. I don't give a shit. I'm a person dealing a card waiting for me to die. That's never been the game in Flesh and Blood.
yep.
But you move that to any IP, such as if they can get Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or 40K or any of these, if they ever go that route, if they want to break out of theirs, this system can support those games and I think be phenomenal because the system, the gameplay, the functionality is great. It stands on its own, but the same core system could be leveraged for other IPs, and I think that is why the game will stand the test of time.
That is true. And to think about it, they do have a patent pending. I haven't checked. I think when their patent is approved, it will get it will
They
be
have a
public.
patent on the game system, you think?
Yeah. So you have one of those packs that you have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
On the back of the
Yep.
pack it says patent pending. So what I know about patent law with games is you can't really patent a game system because it's like a process, but I do know that it does seem like they have some type of patent that they are trying to make, and I don't know what it would be.
One. Okay, so let's look. So this is I also collect art sets of packs.
Oh,
Let's see.
nice.
Does it say patent pending on
So it's the back
um
it's the back flap. You have to open the flap and it says like 2022 distributed by Legend
it
Story
does.
Studios.
So even on the original WTR, and
Yep.
this one is a Japanese one. So I'll go grab my Belgium one in a little bit and look, but it says patent pending on that as well. So now I'm curious what patent filing they have, whether it's the game system or maybe it's the lore and the world. There could be a ton of different things that they could be patenting.
I think they would do it on the pitch system personally. I think that's what they try. I think like what you can do is you can try to patent a game system, but there's been patent law with games in the past where literally another game like rips off everything, all the mechanics, and then just reskins it, and they've gotten away with it because
Yeah,
you can't patent a process or mechanics to a game system. So IP is
sure.
so important. I think a lot of TCGs out there don't understand that, and they might commission artwork for their game, but you're just shooting yourself in the foot because if you don't own those images, then what do you have after 10 years? You don't have anything. So
And I think
Legends.
Magic is starting to run into that same scenario right now, as their
Oh,
IP
really?
is technically weak, so
Yeah.
to speak. Like, they're not, they have a world, but their lore, they kind of fell off the lore bandwagon. and I think there's more lore in Flesh and Blood than there really is now going forward in Magic, I think.
Well, they're definitely seem to focus, and there's no way Flesh and Blood's going to do crossovers. Then I'll be like, okay, this is the death of, or like Flesh and Blood is hurting. Like if they do a crossover, they'll never
Sure.
do that. But like
Yeah, I don't see a
Batman,
Walking Dead, let me play my Walking Dead guy against your, you know, Barney in a Teletubby suit. Like I don't
yeah.
see that being. One last real random shout out here, by the way. So I ordered a card from Flukenbox's shop. It was two Crazy Brews, one in French, I think, and one in Italian, and
Hmm.
they got here. It finally arrived.
Oh, how
So
long did it take?
all the way from Australia. I'd have to look at the exact time, but it was probably about a week from when I ordered to
Oh
get it.
wow,
Actually,
that's fast.
the most expensive part was really the shipping. But I didn't own any Italian or other cards from the game, and I was like, Crazy Brew's fun, so I'll start collecting those.
That's cool, man. Yeah, and what is it? Shout out. What is it, man? I love the Haven Game Store. They're my local game store. I was over there. What is it? Last week, it just cracking like 4 different boxes. It was a fun time, but yeah, I've been really liking supporting them. It's good to support a game store, you know.
Absolutely. And if you do totally get to make it to Baltimore, I'm driving, so I can not only bring some stuff, but I can pack some boxes, and if you want, we can crack and draft and have a blast.
I'll let you know,
Uh,
man. Like I really
for
hope I can
sure.
make it, but yeah, it'd be great to meet you in person. Like we've been chatting like through Discord good amount of time, so it'd be really cool. And it was great talking to you tonight, man. Thanks for being available, and yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on in Flesh and Blood.
It's an exciting 2023, and I think that there is, we don't know much about Outsiders other than what's been spoiled so far, but I think there's some stellar stuff to come, and I'm really looking forward to seeing those spoilers from all the different content creators. And I think Fabrary is posted some of that information out there, so you can find that on there if you're still looking. So
Yeah, I hope everyone checks it out. Like, I love spoiler season, seeing everyone's videos, seeing what they're doing, and how they present the spoiler cards, and like talking through it all. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Well, thanks again, man.